Om Dhyaya Nityam Mahesham Rajata Girinibham Charu Chandravatamsam Ratna Kalpojvalangam Parshumrgavara Bhiti Hastam Prasannam Padmasinam Samantatstutam Amaraganervagakritim Vasanam Vishwadim Vishwabijam Nikhila Bhayaharam Panchavaktram Trinetram. We meditate eternally upon that great Lord who shines like a mountain of silver adorned with the crescent moon. His limbs flash as if ornamented. He is holding an axe and a deer in his two left hands. He is assuring fearlessness and granting boons with the mudras of his two right hands. He is seated in the lotus posture, absorbed in the deepest samadhi. All about him, gods and demons and other such beings are praising him and hymning him. He is the ground upon which the universe rests and the seed from which it springs forth. He is the pure light of consciousness, the dispeller of all fear. With 5 faces and 3 eyes, we meditate eternally upon that great Lord, Pashupatinath, Shiva. Om Karpura Gauram Karunavataram Samsara Saram Bhujagendraharam Sadavasantam Hridayarvinde Bhavam Bhavani Sahitam Namami Kailasa Pirtasana Madhya Samstam Bhaktaischa-nandhyadhivisevyamanam Bhaktartidavanalamaprameyam Dhyayed Umalingita Vishwarupam Dhyayed Umalingita Vishwarupam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Ganganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Shivarpanamastu. Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. Jai Ma. So as you know, the 5 heads of Lord Shiva, it's a very important image because from these 5 mouths, the Panchavaktras, come the Tantras, come the Agamas. So unlike the Vedas, as you know, which are aparoshaya, meaning unrevealed by any particular individual, the Tantras are attributed to Lord Shiva. So in that sense, the Tantras and the Tantric tradition as a whole is a little more traditionally religious, whereas the Vedas, it's a very unique view of religion actually, that no prophet or no god is needed for the revelation of truth. So in the Vedic tradition, truth just inheres in reality, as you know. So like you don't need to have a person reveal it to you. It's just there. And if you tune yourself to it, you will encounter it. So by Vedas, no books are meant, Swami Vivekananda points out. So anybody anywhere in the world, if they're tuned to the Veda, will immediately access the Veda. Vidya, the knowledge of the Vedas, just inheres in nature. Whereas in the Tantric world, it's Lord Shiva who speaks the Tantras into existence. So we have the Tantras because it's like a written down account of what Lord Shiva says to Parvati, or what Parvati sometimes says to Lord Shiva. And often the word for Tantra, the older word for it is Agama. And these days, in like modern scholarship, there's some effort to distinguish the word Tantra from Agama. So Tantra often gets used to refer to like Śākta Tantra. So Tantra has more of a left-leaning, sort of transgressive, non-dual flavor. Typically what people have in mind when they think of like Bhairava Agamas. The word Agama then is sometimes used to refer to maybe the more Śaiva Siddhānta approach, the more like right-leaning, more orthodox view. So there has been an attempt, I think, in modern scholarship to distinguish between the word Agama and the word Tantra. But again, I think that's valuable, but I think it's important to notice also that the tradition uses these 2 words interchangeably. The Tantric tradition, based on the set of texts known as the Tantras, is also the Agamic tradition, because those texts, those Tantras, can also be called Agamas. But interestingly, there's also another version of this distinction that's being made in modern scholarship between Agama and Nigama. There's a bit of maybe traditional, like, citation that we can maybe have for this distinction that makes it a little bit more of a kosher distinction than the Tantra Agama thing. But again, the purpose of this distinction is to say that some texts are for Lord Shiva to reveal to Parvati. Those are called Agamas. And other texts are for Parvati to reveal to Lord Shiva. Those are called Nigamas. So the Agamas and Nigamas. And so you see again the same kind of distinction between like Agama and Tantra, which again, as you notice, is a kind of distinction. If you watch closely, it's a kind of distinction between right and left. Orthodox, more Brahmanical, more patriarchal Tantra, and again, patriarchal not in the pejorative sense, just in the sense that it's about Shiva. And of course, the kind that we like to study here most eminently, the left-leaning Tantras, which are more about the goddess. So this whole like right and left kind of distinction, that's already being made in the textual basis itself. But I think, taking a step back from all of this, it's important to say the whole thing, the whole range is the Tantric tradition. That we have all these different texts, some 10 agamas, which are dualistic, they say, some 18 which are qualified non-dualistic, and some 64 which are properly non-dualistic. Again, that's not entirely fair, because even those 64 non-dualistic texts are pretty dualistic. Like take the Malini Vijaya Uttara Tantra. It's listed as a Bhairava Agama. When you look at it, it looks pretty dualistic. So again, these distinctions are sort of exegetical, and they're made post the fact, and they're made to try to systematize a tradition that's maybe too wild and too vast and too diverse to be systematized. It's almost like to try to systematize Tantra is like to try to systematize all the religions in the world, which is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda are doing. And interestingly, what Vivekananda is doing for all the religions in the world, arguably Abhinava is doing for all the religions of his time, namely the Tantric world. So it's crazy. Like what the word Tantra means is so hard to say, because it means so many different things all at once. And attempts have been made to make it mean one thing and not the other thing. You know, of course, Patri, I would love to do that. Anyway, so we have these ideas of agamas, tantras, nigamas, whatever, but they're all revealed by Lord Shiva. So we just meditated on Lord Shiva. We just had an image in our mind of Lord Shiva with his 5 faces revealing the tantras. And we've talked a lot about how each face is attributed a particular school. Again, the demarcations between one school and another are not that clear. But in any case, he reveals the tantras. Lord Shiva, the deity Shiva, reveals the tantras. And then interestingly, later, you'll get texts from the Buddhist tradition that will challenge the source of the tantras. They'll say, no, those things that were formerly revealed by Lord Shiva, in truth they are revealed by the deity Manjushri, which is an interesting claim. It's saying that like, there is a source, but it's a Buddhist deity, not a Hindu deity, who reveals the tantras. And so you get like competing tantras, like Buddhist tantras, which more or less are one-to-one Hindu tantras. It's just that their deities are different. So where the Hindu tantra might be more about like say Shiva or Ardhanareshwara or something, the Buddhist tantra might have a similar idea but with a different name maybe. So they might say Manjushri or something, or Vajrasattva or something like that, which is interesting because the same modality, just different deities and different traditions. And then within the quote-unquote Hindu tantric world, there's also like Vaishnava tantra. And this is a really interesting story. It's apparently like Lord Shiva reveals this tantra to Narada, and then Narada reveals it to a bunch of Vaishnava saints. So this is called the Pancharatra tantra system. And there are like more extreme versions of this where it's like revealed by Vishnu or by Lakshmi, so Lakshmi tantra, etc. But again, when you look at the Lakshmi tantra, even though you say it's been in the Vaishnava world, it has a lot of mantras that you find in Gauri, kind of Śākta, more Shaiva coded tantras. So having said this, the tantric world, whether it's Buddhist or Vaishnava, or whether it's, properly speaking Shaiva, like whatever the case may be, the tradition can trace itself back to a particular revelator, like a particular source. So it's called a Paurusheya type of tradition, as opposed to the Vedic tradition, which is the Aparusheya approach. There's like nobody who reveals it. But then again, this is important, it's Brahma, the first person in one sense, who is able to discern the Vedas. And so he then speaks the Vedas into existence with his 4 heads. So we say there are 4 Vedas, which again is kind of anachronistic, because only later in history that Veda Vyasa allegedly compiles these hymns into 4 traditions. So there are 4 Vedic traditions, and very rarely will a person learn all 4. Some people do. They call them Chaturvedis, or Trivedis, or Dvivedis. It's a name. You can get a title for memorizing all 4 Vedas. But very rarely will you meet a Chaturvedi, a Brahmana who knows all 4 Vedas. Like, for instance, in my family, it's the Yajurveda, like we're in that stream, the Yajurveda stream. And so too with Bhairavanand also. A lot of people who are in the Shaiva world, they're very much within the Yajurveda kind of stream. Although the Sri Chakra worship, or the tradition of Sri Vidya, which is very big in the south where we grew up, that has links to the Atharva Veda. There's some passages in the Atharva Veda. So these Vedas, very rarely will you learn all 4, but it's important to note that if there are 4 of them, then this is what Brahma's 4 heads symbolize. That there are 4 Vedas. And although Brahma did not write the Vedas, this is so important, he is the one who reveals it. So in that sense, he becomes like Adi Guru. He's the Adi Yogi, the first one who meditates. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? It's the beginning of the universe. There's no Century City Mall and AMC or anything like that. I wouldn't know what to do if there wasn't Century City and no AMC. I'm an AMC A-lister, so I'm sorry, I'm a higher caste than everyone, so you plebeians will never understand the joy of my own line. I get a separate line at the empty AMC. And the other day we went to see the 2 Towers. They're playing all the Lord of the Rings films again, and it's the best. So anyway, what would I do in a world where there isn't AMC 2 Towers screenings? Yeah, you went to all of those also, Gyaneshwari. I'm glad. Yeah, they're just showing them again. But like, imagine it's the dawn of the universe. There is not yet any AMC or Century City. My international audience are like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's a film theater, American movie cinema or something, right? Like AMC literally just stands for American movie cinema or something crazy like that. A mall cinema. I call it a mall cinema. It's just a cinema in a mall. But like back then, yeah, AMC. Back then, there's no AMC, there's no Century City. I say back then as if this is a temporal story. Obviously, it's not. Yeah. They don't even have the two trees. What to say of the two towers? There's not yet anything to think about. So technically, it's effortless. Meditation is effortless when there's nothing to distract you. You're just in being. So Brahma, he's just there and he's just like, in that moment, immediately privy to the Vedas. The Vedas are immediately resounding within his being. So he then speaks it, or he sings it, and the universe comes about as a result of Brahma singing the Vedas. So here, the creator, God, who creates the universe, so Brahma being the creator deity, is creating through singing, but he's singing the Vedas. So the universe then is founded upon the Vedas. This is very important. The Vedas, from the point of view of Purva Mimamsa, which are like the Vedic exegetes par excellence, they claim the Vedas are like the foundation code of the universe. So the Vedas are like the source code, and the universe is an expression of the Vedas. And the Vedas is an aparosheya, a non-human, non-person revelation. And it just is. It's a realist kind of claim. It's just there is such a thing as the Vedas. It just inheres. Its reality is the Veda. Reality is knowledge. And this whole world is an expression of that knowledge. Therefore, if you heard the Veda from your teacher, who likely heard the Veda from their teacher, who heard it from their teacher, who heard it from their teacher, who heard it from their teacher, all the way up to Brahma, or something like that, Narada or Shukadeva or something, then you have the code. Then playing with that code will play with the kind of reality that you exist in. So the Vedas are important to learn because it gives you access to the interface, and then you can code as you like by learning the Vedas. So the whole world then is described in terms of sound, as you know. The Vedas are a repository of hymns, and all you have to do is learn those hymns and chant those hymns, and maybe as you chant also carry out certain rituals. So the right word or the right chant at the right time with the right ritual gesture should create the right outcome. And so that's what the Vedic tradition is all about. Now, the Tantric tradition, this is so important, is not necessarily a separate tradition. As you know, it's the renaissance of the Vedas. So it's an attempt to represent that age-old Veda in a way that's like more appropriate for the Kali Yuga. That's one way of thinking about it. Or in a way that's deeper and more essential. So what Lord Shiva is doing is improving upon Brahma's meditation. You could say that there was like Vedas, like version 1 or something. Just like how the AI keeps updating, it's like 5.2 or something like that. You could say the Tantra is just a deeper understanding of the Veda. And the reason why we say that is because there's so much of stuff that's in the Tantra that's there in the Vedas. Like it's one-to-one. Like you just like import from the Vedas into the Tantra many ideas. Huge swaths of text, also passages, like say in the Mrigendra Agama, you find a lot of stuff from the Yajurveda, Krishna Yajurveda. So there's a lot of like just like copy and pasting, but there's also lots of new stuff, like what I'm going to talk about today. There's like just like stuff that you don't find in the Vedas. Now you could say it's like getting yogurt from milk. It was there the whole time. Shiva just needed to churn it a bit and bring it forth. So it was there, it was just latent. It was implied, now it's made explicit. Or you could say it's not there in the Vedas, and now it's here in the Tantras, which means the Vedas are even deeper than the Vedas. There's more to this source code than we previously thought in Brahma. Brahma taught what we thought was the source code, but he taught some of it. And Shiva, with his 5 heads, like making a sort of sectarian claim here, is going a little deeper. He's now revealing something more. Or he's revealing the same thing, but in a new way that's more appropriate and more suited to our time. Or he's making explicit what is implicit. These are all very important things to remember, that the Tantric tradition is not different from the Vedic tradition. It's all part of one transmission, but it could be an improvement or a deepening of that Vidya. And here comes Vidya Devi. So yeah, it's a good, actually Dimitri Ma is asking a very good question. Who transmitted the Vedas to Brahma? I mean, according to some Puranas, like the mythological stories of India, it's Vishnu Bhagavan, right? In Bhagavata Purana, I think it's like Vishnu who teaches Brahma the Vedas. And of course, in that case, Vishnu maybe is the source of the Vedas. It's hard to say, right? Because each tradition is going to claim that their particular pet deity is the one who revealed the Vedas. Here in the Shaiva world, we're not saying that Shiva revealed the Vedas. I mean, yes, there are texts that claim that. We're saying that the Vedas exist, aparosheya, they just exist without any human being, no gods, no prophets, nothing, it just exists. But Lord Shiva, he is a being. In fact, he is being in and of itself, but here we're thinking of him as a being, Pashupatinath with his 5 heads and whatnot. This being, like Brahma, in his meditation, has revealed the Vedas. But this is even more beautiful. The world is that Veda. So he's dreaming the world into existence. So anyway, having said all of this, the most important thing we inherit as practitioners of the tantric world is the Padati. Right? The Padati means the ritual book. And in the Padati are all the mantras in the particular sequence that they appear. And we just chant those mantras and do those ritual acts. And then like that, we, through the right action at the right time with the right gesture, get the right result. And it could be anything. The results range from making a little more money to realizing God. And maybe both. There's no sense in which the Tantric tradition and also the Vedic tradition finds these to be mutually exclusive goals. Like bhoga and yoga, both in the Vedic tradition and in the Tantric tradition, are both entertained. And the argument here is that by mastering sound and vibration and resonance, this is how we bring these goals about. Because the universe is nothing but a universe of sound, vibration, and resonance. So inheriting the Padati is the most important thing that can happen. And the Padati contains all of these mantras, which are held with such reverence. The mantras are sacred because they're like living, breathing entities. Insofar as the world is alive, it's alive as sound. The mantras are like the most living sounds, the primordial sounds. So what I want to do today is exciting. I'm happy to return to our Thursday night set of talks. There are 2 of them, right? We used to do 2 talks every Thursday. The first one is Annapurne Sadapurne Shankara Prana Vallabhe Jnana Vairagyam Siddhyartham Bhiksham Dehi Cha Parvati. Bhiksham Dehi Cha Parvati. It's meal time, so bon appetit. Bon appetit. Anyway, I'm not going to attempt that accent. So here's the most important thing, that we get the Padati. Like what else? Like can we work? Our whole tradition, our whole practice depends on that Padati. It tells us what ritual to do every single day and what mantras to chant and all of that. But what I want to do tonight, the 2 talks that we usually do back to back, are the Puja talks and the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra talks. And we used to do the Vijnana Bhairava on this like other platform, but since we got, since that class dropped, we also kind of dropped the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra thing a bit, so we had a bit of a hiatus there. So I know some of you want the Vijnana Bhairava, some access to that. I saw your messages, I'll send it. And Mahadeva ji and many of you have been asking for Padati, so that's the next thing I want to talk about. So I want to do a Vijnana Bhairava Tantra class today, maybe in like about an hour's time. We'll switch gears and we'll go to the Vijnana Bhairava. And what I want to do is just review everything. So we'll just go from mantra 1 and go all the way down as far as we can in the time that we have to the mantra that we're at now. So we can just practice as we go, just to catch everybody up, especially after we've taken such a big hiatus. Then we can make more progress. So I hope to like take up the next verse next week so we can continue with the Vijnana Bhairava stuff. Kalidasi Jaima. So I want to do a Vijnana Bhairava Tantra class, but before that, I know many of you are asking for Padatis. Some of you want Homa Padatis. I've received a lot of inquiries about that. Like you want to do Homa, and just kidding. Maybe some of you are doing Puraścārana and you're thinking about the Homa component. So I know you're looking for a Homa Padati, and I do have one that's floating around that I've sent to some of you, but it's not that helpful, I think, because Homa is a little technical. I mean, it's actually much easier than Puja. Like Homa is far simpler, far more direct. Kind of like how Vedic mantras are way more direct than the very Kavya-oriented mantras of the rest of the tradition. It's like in the same way, the Homa is very direct. It's just light a fire and throw things in it. That's like really the TLDR of the Vedic like ritual. Light a fire, feel that God is in that fire, and then just throw whatever you want into it. But of course, like you throw things into the fire that you want God to have. So ghee being very valuable and milk. Yeah. And then Tarpanam, and we have Jayarataji, Jaima, and then you have like all these like Tarpanam, like all these things that are part of the Puraścārana that I want to go over with you, and I think we need to have some Padati for it. Because the one that I have now, that I'm sending around, is just, I don't think like, even given how easy the ritual is, it's still kind of technical, and there's a way to arrange the wood, there's very specific ways as to how to like whirl about the, what do you call it, the Deepa Shalaka, the firebrand, how to stick it into the thing. Like there's a lot of like, that's what she said. A lot of things, like a lot of different things that you need to like know that aren't there in the Padati, and those mantras are not translated. They're just transliterated. So I didn't go and translate those mantras. And part of the reason why is because I'm struggling with translating some of these mantras because my Vedic Sanskrit is like terrible. It's like, it's not the same. It's like, these are words that, some of these words I don't understand. And the grammar is different. And so I might like get some ChatGPT help, though I don't like to do that. And I know I'll make some mistakes. So I just left it. I didn't want ChatGPT to go over those Vedic mantras without me to like edit it and understand. So I don't know. I've had a block in translating the Homa Padati because I just don't want ChatGPT translations. You know what I mean? Like they're fine and all, but if I'm going to use that to translate, I'd like to also look over it and make sure it's translated it the way that I feel is satisfactory. But I can't do that with some of these mantras. So given that, I've had a bit of a, what do you call it, like a block in translating the Homa Padati and also in editing it. So I think I just have to get over that and like just do that tonight and send out a Homa Padati with maybe some pictures, like pictures of the wood arranged. And I don't know, I sent out some videos some time ago to our little Kula chat, like videos of me like setting up the fire, but maybe just a few pictures, something. I just need to get a Padati out, a Homa Padati out that like, can be used. Right now, the one that's floating around out there is not ideal, and I understand that. So those of you who are looking to do Homa, let me try to get it done soon. Yeah, training video. But the Padati is good because like sometimes you're like out doing a Homa in a place where there isn't maybe reception. I know some of you in the Denver Sangha, maybe you go out into the mountains and you're doing Homa there and maybe there's no reception, or we're on the beach sometimes, and having a hard copy might be nice, or even a soft copy that's like written down. That might be nice also. So I got to work on that. And I know Kalidasi, you had asked in the Padati's chat, like there was like a thread for a better Padati, right? Like a more like streamlined Padati. This is another thing. In our community, there are a few of them floating around. There's the Kali Puja in 16 steps from maybe 2 years ago when we were trying to like consolidate just the Kali Puja without all the other preliminaries, just so people can get right into the worship of Kali. That was during Kali Puja, maybe 2023 or something. So I know that that's out there somewhere, the 16 steps. Then we expanded it to include like the Bhairava Puja, the Jackal Puja, the Uchishta Chandalini Puja. So then from 16 steps, it became 22 steps, which I was very excited about. Given the mantra, I was like, this is some cool Vedic shit, like 22 steps, 22 syllables, like, yeah, this is so cool. But then it became 23. So with the Om. So there's another one out there, right? Which is called, I think, Kali Puja Sangha PDF or something like that. And both of those were edited by Shani Deva. So we're very grateful to Shani Deva for doing all the editing. But one thing about those is that they're pretty outdated, right? In the sense that we worked on them in like 2022, 2023. Shani Deva put them out in 2023. So there's a lot that's changed since then. A lot of mantras that we've updated. The krama in that is like, again, not the krama, meaning sequence. Krama means sequence. It's not the krama that we have in our original Padatis. They're edited to suit whatever the needs were for that time. Like at that time, maybe the community needed X, so we like worked the Padati to meet that need. So it might not even now be the Padati of choice. So I get that like there's a bunch of confusion around what the Padati is. And I'm reluctant to have a Padati because everyone's puja will look different. You know, everyone is assembling their own Padati because everyone in this community has different puja needs and a different understanding of puja. And that should be honored. So like you're building your own. Right? You're building your own grimoire, as it were. So we're just presenting as much material as we can, and then you just take the mantras that you think are appropriate for you, and you like build your own Padati from that. So like that's the idea. That's why I didn't want to like put out a Padati. But I think it's still helpful, right? I think it's still nice to like have something to refer to. So I'm gonna try to work then. Right? Yeah, and again, there's no best way to build a Padati, as Sonama is asking. Like there's no like right best practices or right way. It's just kind of like however you like. Some people like to print out the Padatis and put them in like a binder where like you can move things around. So you might decide, okay, I like to do the Avarana Puja before the Bhairava Puja, which is what I do. I do Kali and then I do the Avaranas, then only I do Bhairava. But in some Padatis, you do Kali and then Bhairava, Shavarupa Shiva, and then you do all the Avaranas, you know? So like that kind of thing, that might be personal choice. It's informed by like lineage, what you learned from your teacher, but also informed by your personal choice and your own understanding, informed by inspiration sometimes. Like all of these things matter in assembling a Padati. Because remember, by Padati I mean a ritual book. And by ritual, I mean something that you do every single day as part of your spiritual life. And that's really your business. You know, that's like what you're doing with your time and your own way of connecting to the divine. Like we can't prescribe one size fits all kind of Padati. But that being said, it isn't totally subjective either, because there's some, like we said earlier, objective considerations, like the way the universe rests upon the Vedas. There's a certain inherent logic that means that we can respect tradition and we can try our best to do things the way that they're done, knowing full well that we have to balance that against how we want to do them and how we want to approach things, which is perfectly valid also. So what we get after all of this is this very interesting balance between tradition and spontaneity, between adhering to what came before and pushing the boundaries of what can come next. That's where Tantra lives. That's the cutting edge of Tantra. We walk on the razor's edge of tradition and innovation. So having said all of that, that's on me. Yeah, exactly. Like you need something to go off of, right? You need a padati, and then from that padati you can then make your own. Or if you want to like push against something, you need to have it there first to be able to push. I mean, like what's the point of transgression if that rule isn't there? So like the whole conversation about transgression and the left-hand path, it requires a deep grounding in the right-hand path. And what does that look like? I mean, although the term is somewhat modern, it looks like traditionally learning things the way that they've been done forever, at least for a couple of centuries, if not a millennia. So if you look over here, let's go back to like where all the resources are. Let me just show you. If we go over here, excuse me, where are you? Yeah, if we go over here, so if you like scroll into like collections, right? Like this collections over here. So this is where all the puja classes are. And this is going to be our 100th class, which is really exciting. So I thought because it's our 100th addition to this playlist, I would say a few things about the series broadly. And then when we do our Vijnana Bhairava Tantra class, like all of those classes are here. So these are kind of like our two biggest series, as it were. And every Thursday night, we like try to make a bit of progress into these two collections. So if you go into these collections, like you'll find all the videos that you need. Of course, this how to practice spirituality thing is kind of important. And I'm happy that there are 22 videos in here because, you know, the mantra. But if you go into this one, it's nice because it gives you kind of broad overarching ideas that maybe have nothing to do with puja. That's important to me, that like puja doesn't have to be your practice. Like everyone's practice is different. It doesn't have to look like puja. But because we're doing tantra, so much of tantra is puja, this is the kind of practice that most people are going to be involved in. So once you have this basic understanding of how to practice spirituality, kind of the overarching ideas that are present in Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda and the tantric tradition as a whole, then you can with that apply all of these things. And so this is an important foil, right? The Vijnana Bhairava disagrees with this playlist as to what puja looks like. I wouldn't say disagrees, but kind of pushes back on the idea of puja being just the thing that you do with flowers and incense and fire. So this is tantric ritualism, which is the vast majority of tantra. And this is like a deep, I don't want to say deeper, but a different, subtler teaching. This is a more non-dual, internal sort of thing. So this is very like external with some middling internal stuff. And this is almost entirely internal. But again, you can't say that because this is about turning the whole world into puja. So this might even be more external. It's hard to say. But these two together are very important. Like these two, to me, when you study both of these playlists side by side, you get what classical tantra is really about. And of course, hatha yoga, this is interesting. This isn't actually classical tantra. This is post-classical tantra. So hatha yoga will come after a lot of the ideas that we get here, you know, in terms of the historical progression of things. So this triad is important to me because this is where you get the bulk of like some of the more esoteric stuff in our community. Of course, if people would pay more attention to this playlist, a lot of issues might be resolved because here we very carefully explain what the guru is to avoid all the 70s kind of projections of what a bearded Indian man is supposed to do in the capacity of a guru here in this country. You know, so like this is 20 disclaimer videos to explain that God alone is the guru, etc., etc. So like they all go together. Like with this, you understand the guru and you know the guru to be Shiva, and you know that Shiva reveals both this kind of tantra and this kind of tantra. Because that's important. These two things together are like the two wings of the bird, and then you can fly with them, and the guru gives those wings, the guru being Shiva. So this is the way the logic of this kind of collections work. Now, because we just had Gupta Navaratri and soon we'll have the Spring Navaratri, look, there's a Chandi and Navaratri series too. This is very important because this is a sadhana unto itself, which references material from these two playlists. But this is its own thing. It's like a recitation practice of like a specific text that can be ritualized even more, like in the context of puja, but doesn't need to be. In fact, one of the most beautiful things about Chandi Parayana is that you don't need puja. It itself says that it's better to just chant the Chandi, just recite the mantras, 700 or so, than like doing puja. Like it's better to just chant than to worship in the traditional way. So these are all like separate standalone practices, you know, and then of course Shri Vidya, this is going to draw upon a lot of this stuff. The Kashmir Shaivism 101 series, like that goes nicely with the Vijnana Bhairava. But this stuff is a bit more advanced. The Dasha Mahavidya and Sri Vidya's playlist, it's a bit more advanced. And what I've added now is this new playlist. the Vamachara playlist, which is kind of superfluous because almost everything in our community is Kaula coded. Not everything, but almost everything is Kaula coded. So we almost approach everything from a Kaula or Śākta point of view, which necessarily means there are a lot of Vamachara elements. But then I thought, let's just be like quite clear about it and let's put all the Vamachara stuff in like one place. So I want to update you now on like 3 things to look out for moving forward. There are 3 padhatis that I'm working on, and I hope to have at least one of them done by tonight, Ma willing. The first one is the Homa padhati. I know many of you, it's like time to do Homa, and you're like itching to do Homa, and you'd like more instruction on that. So let me put that padhati out first, the Homa padhati. And again, it's going to be the Homa padhati for now. It's a living document. It might change as time goes on, but it's also something that you will use to build your own. So it's not like you have to do it this way. It's just here's a reference, and then you can work out something that you find more doable. Again, like if the mantras are just too hard to pronounce or there are too many of them, then just light a fire and say, Ma, come into the fire, and then just make ghee offerings while you chant just one mantra with a swaha at the end, if that mantra doesn't already have a swaha. So we'll talk about that a little more in just a bit. So look out for the Homa padhati. Secondly, look out for a new updated Kali padhati. So I might start putting dates on them, like Kali padhati 2025 or something like that, because they're always growing, you know. So just to keep us straight, like, or keep us gay, Kali padhati 2025. Okay, like that's the one I'll put out. Oh my god, it's 2026 now. So 2026, Kali padhati 2026. So that's the second padhati. The third padhati, you guys, that I'm kind of excited to put out is like a specific padhati that just specifically tackles those elements of Kali Puja that are unique to Kali Puja, that don't have to be there in Kali Puja, that are often omitted from Kali Puja, which are the ghost worship, the jackal worship, Uchishta Chandalini worship, and the Vamachara, like Panchamakaras type stuff. And so I want to make a Vamachara padhati, like specifically those elements in the puja that have to do with the more Kaula, like left-leaning orientation that we find with Kali. So Bali, right? Like Kali's like animal sacrifice tradition, which is an important tradition. That's a hill I'm happy to die on. You know, so that there's a padhati for that. Like what you need to do in order to carry out a bali, like that should be there in that padhati. And the ghost worship also, that's considered kind of vamachara, to worship ghosts and to be in a cremation ground. Some of you do like to practice in cremation grounds. Like actually, of course we say there's no need to do that. The whole world is a cremation ground. Your room is a cremation ground. Isn't everything dead already anyway? But I myself like to practice in cremation grounds. And those of us who were there in Ashland, you can't deny, like there's something about us doing the Homa, we did a little dhuni in the cemetery. It's not a cremation ground, it's a cemetery, but didn't you feel there's something to it? And we were up all night, two nights in a row in that Ashland cemetery. And it was cold, and who minded? Yeah, right, Deepa Lila? And there's like, yeah, Vidyama went and collected the ashes from the dhuni. But it's a beautiful thing to be there in the cemetery meditating. And the first night we didn't have a dhuni, we just sat and meditated. It was Shivaratri that night. The next night was Ratanti Kali Puja, and we lit the dhuni. And there's something about the smashan. And for some people, that's something they want to do literally. So given that, the Bhuta Puja and the Jackal Puja, those two things are important. So we have to learn how to worship ghosts, how to worship jackals. And so I wanted a padhati that just addressed those things. So we call it the Vamachara padhati or something. So those are 3 new padhatis that I'm hoping to get out soon, and I think would be helpful for those of you who want to maybe take your ritual traditions to a new height. You know, like those of you who are already inclined to puja and to homa. And as Jayarata is pointing out, there's also like tarpana, libations, and there's marjana. Those are 2 rituals that are included in the 5 things that constitute Puraścaraṇa, which brings me to my next point, the Puraścaraṇa. So I'd like to go over Puraścaraṇa now, if you don't mind, because arguably that's like the only real thing that you need to learn in terms of tantric sadhana. It's like the only thing actually there is in tantric sadhana, and everything else is just a variation on the Puraścaraṇa. So we've talked about it in many other contexts. Like we have video upon video about Puraścaraṇas. I think one is called the best tantric ritual. That was the first time I think we taught Puraścaraṇa in a more like explicit, overt, and focused way. So I'd recommend maybe going and seeing that, because we did a kind of loose translation of chapter 15. Did we do the translation? Or maybe we read another translation from somebody. We did chapter 15 from the Kularnava Tantra, where we get an explanation of Puraścaraṇa. But it's not just the Kularnava Tantra, which arguably is a bit modern, later Tantra. In ancient Tantras, the oldest Tantras, you get Puraścaraṇa. It's an idea that you find across the board in Vaishnava Tantra, in Buddhist Tantra, in Hindu Tantra, in Jain Tantra. Like it's just there everywhere. And if you go to like certain places now, like Pashupatinath, which is in Nepal or somewhere, you'll see Buddhists and Hindus, both of them doing the same thing, just on their rosaries. And often it's the same kind of rosary, like a yak bone or buffalo bone rosary. Like it's the same setting, it's the cremation ground or a cave or something. And although the deities might be different, like Buddhist deities versus Śākta deities versus Shaiva deities versus Vaishnava deities, the practice is the same, which is just repeating the mantra that the Guru gave in a certain way, in a certain systematic kind of like structure. So it's interesting because that's the one thing that Tantra has in common across the board, across all these different traditions. Puraścaraṇa. And so I thought, because this is our 100th lecture, we can take stock of where we are so far. We can just look at what we've covered so far and look at where we're headed. But before we do that, let's just like get this down. Let's like fully understand the Puraścaraṇa and know what our sadhana really looks like insofar as we're interested in practicing Tantra. When you read the Leela Prasanga, which I highly recommend for everybody, like Sri Ramakrishna's life, there's of course a big section in the Leela Prasanga devoted to Sri Ramakrishna's sadhana. So for 12 long years, Sri Ramakrishna does formal sadhana. See, before this, he's obviously very spiritually inclined, yes? And he has all these like important, like formative experiences that have just come naturally to him as a result of growing up. But it isn't until he comes to the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar, and it isn't until he takes up his role as the head priest of said temple, that he really starts to get into sadhana. He only really starts practicing spirituality once he becomes a priest, which is important, you know, because it means that his first practice ever is puja. That's the first thing that he like technically learned to do. But notice, when learning puja, he had to be initiated into a Kali mantra. That's what gives him the right to perform Kali puja. So traditionally speaking, one doesn't do Kali puja until they learn how to do Kali puja. But the only way to learn to do Kali puja is to go to someone who knows how to do Kali puja. So then that person, in teaching you to do Kali puja, will also give you what is called a japa mantra, guru mantra, ishta mantra. So Sri Ramakrishna presumably heard that mantra from one Kedaram Bhattacharya, who of course heard it from his guru, who heard it from his guru, etc., etc. And this is back then, maybe there wasn't a lot of literature available. Yeah, there were things like the Śākta Pramodaha or the Pranatoshini Tantra. There were like, we have actually historical records of these Padhatis, like, you know, Tarak Dada's father owned a Padhati, and some of the direct disciples, their parents were fathers were deeply involved in the Tantric Bengali Śākta worlds, you know. In fact, even Swami Aparananda, who composed a lot of our Hollywood temple Padhati, like, he comes from such a family, a Bengali family of Śākta Brahmanas. So there's literature, obviously there's literature, but it's not like today where the literature is so readily available. There's no internet, you know, the printing press isn't the same. So really, it required going to a human being who would then, in a very human way, teach you the puja. So it's likely that Sri Ramakrishna learnt Kali puja from both this Kedaram Bhattacharya, like a guru, a Kula guru or something, family guru, and also from his brother, Ram Kumar. So both of them were kind of his like puja gurus. You know, Ram Kumar probably taught him a lot. Ram Kumar is the elder brother who used to be the head priest of the Kali temple before Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna is the younger brother who inherits that role after his elder brother like kicks it, right? So anyway, he's learning this puja, he gets a japa mantra, and the first thing that he does is apply himself in tantric sadhana, which means doing daily puja. Pretty much every single day, he would perform a puja to Ma Kali. It's interesting because it's also like there are other priests. You have to remember that it's like a job. He's working a job. He's like a temple priest professionally. So it might not be the case that he's doing the puja in the professional capacity, because sometimes maybe a younger priest might take the Wednesday or the Friday slot or something. He might do Tuesday or Saturday. He might do bigger pujas, you know, because he's the head priest. Or, I don't know how the temple organized itself back then. You know, I'm just assuming that there was a schedule and that the different priests had different jobs. It's also perfectly likely, again, I don't know, but it's perfectly likely that he did the puja every day. As the head priest, maybe his role was to do the puja every day. I'm not exactly sure what his puja schedule looked like, but here's what we do know. He did puja a lot. If not every day, a lot. And he did puja not in the way that the priests do it as part of their job, just trying to get through the mantras. He used to criticize that a lot, actually. It's more like it was sadhana for him, as it is for us. Like, we're not doing parartha puja for other people, like as part of a temple culture. Like, we're not getting salaried. Most of us aren't anyway. And even when we do, it's usually very small dakshina. Like, we're not making a living off of doing puja. And some people do that. Of course, it's a caste. A whole caste of people do it. And Brahmanas, believe it or not, look down upon other Brahmanas who engage themselves in temple duties. Being a priest is considered very vulgar for a Brahmana. You know, isn't that interesting? Because it's like, how can you sell God? It's like weird. It's weird to like make money off of that. It seems kind of like it cheapens the sanctity of a temple to be expecting money to perform priestly duties. And of course, that's what eventually happens. The priests then become kind of scammy. And who can blame them? That's like literally their only source of income. So then they have to start, you know, mogging tourist or something, but they put like if you go, they'll put a mala on you and they'll be like, okay, give 2,000 rupees. And what do you know? You'll have to give the 2,000 rupees or something. And again, that's fine. Like what can they do? That's their job. Their job is to make money from worship. So therefore they have to find ways, like, you know, like you go on the internet, there are people who will sell darshan from temples. They'll be like, okay, you send me money, you wire me money, and then I'll take a photo of like your name on a piece of paper and hold it in front of the deity. So the priest then acts as an intermediary between you and, say, Matara or something, and you pay money for the priest to do that mantra on your behalf. Like it's archana, they call it. So you pay, and then the priest does an archana, and that's fine. That's just part of Indian, or rather Vedic life. The priest does a role, and the priest is remunerated for that role. Fine. But again, Brahmanas often look down on this kind of thing, and Sri Ramakrishna himself was really averse to becoming a temple priest. It was a really fortunate thing for us, though, that he did eventually get strong-armed into the position, because that's when his spiritual life really took off. Up to this point, he was deeply, deeply spiritual and had all these effortless experiences. But it wasn't until this moment that he started to take up sadhana, serious spiritual practice. So what happens is, he learns puja, he gets this Kali mantra, and from what we know, he obsessively throws himself into puja. But he learns the way to do puja perfectly. He learns how to do it, and it's claimed that he really was good at it. He was good at doing a traditional puja. And it's interesting, before this, I think maybe around the same time or slightly before this, he used to do house calls. It's reported that he would go to people's houses and perform pujas for them remotely. And it's said that he used to take a long time, because after he did the puja, and by the way, he would take a long time doing the puja because he really got into it. He used to joke, these Chandi reciters, they would flip pages, but they'll flip 4 or 5 pages at a time just to get through the book more quickly. And no one is the wiser, right? And it's funny because I sometimes go to temples and I know these mantras, so I'll listen to the priest just kind of just say whatever. There's as long as you're saying something in Sanskrit, people think something holy is happening, and they're right. But sometimes it makes no sense. What mantras they say makes no sense, and they're like bees, Once somebody comes in, they start rattling off Sanskrit mantras. And I in the Tamil temples, it's really funny because it's there's one thing that they chant, which is the Shiva Puranam, Manikavasara Shiva Puranam. So the moment someone comes in, they're like, Namah Shivaya Valga, Nadan Tal Valga, Eme Polodum En Ninjal Ninga Dan Tal Valga, and then just rattle off verses randomly in random places, And I've actually been to some temples where I'll start chanting and then there's a bit of competition. And the priests are like, wait, you're stepping on my toes here. You're kind of in my turf. I'm chanting the mantras, I know the mantras, people are paying me to chant the mantras. If you, a devotee, comes in and knows the mantras, then what leverage do I have over you? And also, what people might start paying you then. So, in Kal Bhairav temple, sometimes they come up behind you and they just start chanting the Kal Bhairav Ashtakam. They're dressed all in black, so you think they're priests. They're not. They're just kind of, scallywags in the temple. But, it's Kal Bhairav temple, so they're always, of course, welcome. But they'll come up behind you and they'll just start chanting. Kashika Puradinata Kala Bhairavam Bhaje. They'll just chant. And then when they get to the end of that, they'll be like, see, I did an archana for you. I chanted Kal Bhairav Ashtakam in front of Kal Bhairav for you. Now give 2,000 rupees. Right? And so I remember one time I chanted along with the fellow also. So the both of us chanted it together. And then we were both at the end, we were exactly. Taileshwari, we're like, okay, who pays who now? Did I chant this for you? Or did you chant this for me? Or did we just chant it together? And can we just chill about this dakshana thing? How about we just chanted it together? And there have been times when, people will try to curse you or something like that. They'll try to threaten you with a sankalpa, with some tantric curse or whatever. So now, Usha Mad, the Kali Mandir, taught me this. It's why don't you just do it back? Say somebody says, okay, give dakshana, and then you chant a mantra and you ask for dakshana back. It's just kind of funny. Just you out-priest the priest. No, don't do that. We got whacked and kicked out of the Kal Bhairav temple for something like this. So they can get very aggressive. A lot of these are gang-related kind of places. Kolkata, Kalighat, it's kind of a gangster. Just be careful. But having said all of that, Sri Ramakrishna, here he is, as a temple priest, is unlike the other temple priests. He's not like all the other girls, because he's not doing it as part of a job. So even when he does house calls, he takes his time. He just does the puja with all of his heart, with full love and devotion, and that takes time. And then he gets to the end of a very heartfelt puja, and then he just hangs out. Allegedly he used to stick around and talk to the people, and he would tell them stories, or he would sing, and they would love to hire him, because often it wasn't just about the puja, it was about his presence and about the holy company that they had after the puja. It was the sadhu satsang. It's interesting, I was on the internet. We're on the internet. And I saw this TikTok or Instagram reel or something of this Bengali person sharing about their puja experience. And I thought it was really cute. Actually, I really loved the video because it was like supposed to be nostalgic for diaspora Bengalis living around the world. And so she was walking us through her Bengali like experience, like her household's puja. It was a Lakshmi puja, or maybe a Kali puja or something, I forget. Anyway, she's talking about how she would prepare the food with her mom. Like everything is puja. The whole day is given to the puja. But there's a moment when the priest chants mantras formally at the altar. That's what's formally considered puja. Although when we broaden the term, we mean every action like performed ever, you know. But that being said, I remember in the video, the shortest thing was that. The priest chanting mantras in front of the altar. Like the video was mostly about preparing the prasad and like getting everybody together. That's wonderful. That's really at the heart of it. But I thought it was interesting that the ritual portion where you chant the mantras and worship the deity didn't really feature in the video. And of course it wouldn't, because oftentimes nobody knows what's going on. Even the priest that they hire to come in and do the worship doesn't know what's going on. He's just chanting the mantras that he learned to chant, and that's okay. That's keeping the tradition alive. But that wasn't what Sri Ramakrishna was like. He didn't care about making money. He didn't care about fulfilling his role, really, in that sense. He just wanted to worship Ma. And this was the tool that he somehow stumbled into for doing just that. So the beauty of learning puja is that I'm going to guess that most of us here in this room, we just love Ma, and we don't even know why. I mean, the greatest tragedy in my life is that I fell in love with Ma, and we wouldn't have it any other way, right? But here we are. We just feel an attraction, a fatal attraction even, for this crazy cremation ground lady. But what will happen to us, we who love Kali, if we don't have some way to express that love? You know, we need some way to stabilize in our feeling, and some way to deepen that feeling, and some way to give flight to that feeling. And that's what puja did for Sri Ramakrishna. He was attracted to Ma Kali. He felt like here in this image is an opportunity to experience quote unquote God, whatever that is, which he felt a strange pull towards. And here's a tool. And like I said in another place, like anything would have done at that point. He just had this spiritual urge, and what was in front of him was puja, was Kali, was this Kali temple, was this world of Tantra. So he was like, fuck it, I guess. But I think it's important. I think it's uniquely important that if we say Sri Ramakrishna as the avatara, it's uniquely important that the avatara of this age began his spiritual life and in many ways ended it with Kali. And not just with Kali, but with the tantric worship of Kali along traditional tantric lines as revealed by Lord Shiva. In the opening meditation, we talked about that. So this is so important to me that we remember Sri Ramakrishna was a pujari first. And a lot of the puja that we learn is just tantric puja. It's like all over India. You know, you could say, oh, it's Gaudiya. It's like a Bengali form of puja. And in one sense, the kosha kushi, that might come from Assam. Because in Sāmkhya, we have the goddess as a yoni. And of course, the worship of the goddess in the form of the yoni might mean that we use tools that resemble the yoni. Hence the kosha kushi. This tool. You know, so like something like this kosha kushi. Maybe this is something unique to northeastern India. I know like in the South Indian temples, we don't see this particular thing quite as much. And it like represents Sāmkhya, you know, with mother's like menstrual blood and whatnot. And so it looks like the yoni, and this is where you put the samanyargya. Like we learned so many years ago how to make that holy water, which is central to the puja. So we have this tool, and maybe this tool comes from like Assam or Sāmkhya. And of course, because Sāmkhya, Assam is just next door to Bengal and Nagaland. There's a place called Nagaland, which borders Burma. And it's just, I mean, how awesome, Nagaland. It's a tribal kind of place. So a lot of like headhunters and stuff live there. I don't think they still do headhunting, but it's just, I've never been, but I have a lot of friends who've visited, and they tell me really cool stories about like smoking with the Babas of Nagaland, which is like kind of a liminal space between India and Burma, Myanmar, I mean. So anyway, Nagaland. So anyway, this is like regional. Northeastern India has a form of Śākta puja that maybe is influenced by Assam, by Sāmkhya. It might have local regional flavors from Orissa. You know, of course, like all over India, you have regional flavors. But Tantra is Tantra. Tantra is a pan-Indian universal tradition. So even if it's not a kosha kushi, likely the mantras for installing the rivers into the water in the vessel is going to be the same mantra. They're going to be the same mantras. So that being said, it doesn't matter where you're from in India and where you are in the world. Tantra is a pretty universal tradition. It's pretty consistent. And again, it's consistent across Buddhist, Jain, Vaishnava, and Shaiva lines. There's like this kind of universality to it, which is exciting. So I think it is important that Sri Ramakrishna is learning Tantra. Of course, he's learning a Gaudiya form of Tantra. And what we're learning in our Padati is more or less that. With, of course, elements from all over, but like you'll see there's a kosha kushi, there's like a lot of mantras that have a Gaudiya flavor maybe, you know, whatever. But be that as it may, it should be very exciting to all of us here that the puja that we're doing, or that the sadhana that we're learning together is the sadhana that Sri Ramakrishna started out with. and that he felt was most viable for his quest to realize God. So he's doing puja, right? But he's also doing something else. This is important. Besides puja, he's also doing other bhakti practices. Puja being a subset of a wider world called bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga being that path of devotion where it's all about a personal relationship to a personal ideal. And for him, that's Kali. For Sri Ramakrishna, Kali is a representation of God. And he doesn't consider necessarily in this time anything else to be worthy of his attention but Kali. Like his love is Kali. And then later, of course, he'll have experiences with all other forms and he'll realize that beyond all forms is the one. But right now, the one is for him Kali. So most of us here, I think, our Ishta is Kali. I'm just going to guess that most of you here, your understanding of the divine is Kali. And within Kali are all the Mahavidyas, of course, and you can think of Kali, Durga, and you can think of Durga, Kali, Chamunda, Chandika is all the same. I do. So when people say Durga or Chandika or Chamunda, in my mind, I'm thinking Kali. Or even Lalita, I'm thinking Kali. So like within the Śākta world, you can assign, like today, for instance, Gupta Navaratri is over, so I have all this like prasad incense for Matangi Ma, and so today I offered another incense stick for Matangi Ma, but I'm waving it before my Kali, and I'm using the Matangi mantra. So like that, like when you say Kali, of course you mean also Kali, Shodashi, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamastaka, Dhumavati, but specifically I think Kali. Most of us here are going to be thinking of God as Kali. That's fair to say, I think. But it doesn't have to be that way. It could be anybody. It's just like once you learn puja, you can apply any deity, even Manjushri, even Jesus. You can really use the technology within any context. But what we're teaching here is mainly Kali puja, and that was likely what Sri Ramakrishna was doing. Just Kali was his Ishta. By Ishta is meant his personal understanding of God, and the whole goal here is to have a personal relationship with that. So it's a path of love. It's a path of relating. Puja is one small part of that. The other things that Sri Ramakrishna used to do are maybe equally as important, if not more important. And we recommend that we do these things together also. Singing and dancing and talking and praying. For a lot of religions, like this is it. Like you sing songs, maybe gospel songs. You dance, you clap your hands, you do a step or something, and you celebrate God. Jai Ma is basically like Yay Ma. There used to be a group of Mexican devotees, they would come, and there was one devotee, she used to sing beautiful kirtan, and all the J's would turn into Y's. So she'd be like, Nataraya, Nataraya. And I thought it was so beautiful. It made all the Sanskrit words come to life in this new way for me. And it was almost like reverse Bengali. Bengali sometimes turn the Y to a J. So Shankaracharya will become Shankaracharjo. Right? Shankaracharjo, Vedanta. The V's become B's and the Y's become J's. The word Satya is Shoto. Right? The Bengali doesn't have a Sa sound. They say Sharoda instead of Sarada, Sharoda. Some people get confused. Why is it Jaima, Jaima, Joyma? Well, it depends. Are you Bengali? Then it'll be Joyma, which I like. Isn't that beautiful? Joyma. Sri Ramakrishna would have said that. Joyma. Sri Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna. Sharoda. Sorry, my Bengali accent is not that good. But again, it's important to note then that this puja is like one small thing. Like the singing and the dancing is a big thing. It's a main thing. And so when you talk to God, we call it prayer or something, that relating, that's really what Sri Ramakrishna spent most of his time doing. Puja is formal worship, and some religions don't even have that, but they definitely do have some kind of singing, dancing, celebrating. So even Jai Ma, we say Ye Ma. Thinking of that Mexican devotee, she must have said, instead of Jai Ma, she would say Ye Ma. So like, yeah, like what else? What else is singing and dancing for if not to celebrate? And we're celebrating God. Rejoice. How many times in the Bible does that word appear even? Right? Like even in a tradition that allegedly is about like sin and repentance, it's not. If you look at the Bible again and again, it's a repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Yes, but often it's a rejoice, rejoice. And even in the most solemn of churches, like Jayarata might remember from some past lives or something. Like even in the Orthodox kind of context of like really like smoke and seemingly funeral kind of like Gregorian chant or whatever. It's like, no, like it's celebratory. There's a feeling of like, oh my God, this happened. The Son of God has been sacrificed and we have been atoned and now we can aspire to the kingdom of heaven within, having prepared a way in the wilderness for the coming of the Lord, etc. It's just joy. And Sri Ramakrishna, the way that he would express that joy is through longing also. It wasn't just, yay God. It was like, oh fuck, where are you kind of longing, you know? And so that was expressed in singing Ram Prasad songs, singing Komalakanta songs. Yes, Lakana, so in Philippians 4:4, rejoice, the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Sada Nandamayi, like she's called, Kali is called the one who's always rejoicing. always happy. Yeah, heaven, yeah, heck yeah, hell yeah, fuck yeah. So anyway, this is important that Sri Ramakrishna wasn't just doing puja. He was also singing and dancing and praying, and often by himself at odd hours, he would be standing before the image of Kali, which he is daily serving in the capacity of being the pujari. So he's offering flowers, incense, fire in the way that we're learning to do right now. And on top of that, and maybe because of that, and through that, he's able to have this other kind of connection, this intimacy, where he sings and dances and plays. And so having said all of that, don't forget that what we're teaching in this context of puja also includes an invitation to relate to God in your own way. That's why we say like build your own padati. But even if you're going to do the padati, the ritual as suggested, don't forget that like it's just meant to create an atmosphere where you can be with God. The puja is supposed to create something in the room where you feel her presence, and then you just, whatever you want to do. You can talk to her, you can be mad at her. You can be like, what the fuck? I did this and then you're like this. And that's the thing. It's like there's no question of right or wrong, simple or complicated. Sometimes the most complicated thing is the simple puja. And sometimes the simplest thing is just to follow a complicated padati. I love complicated padatis because I'm a dullard, right? Like I'm spiritually retarded. And that's good. That's okay. Because we have padatis. And so like whatever, like you could be like this, you could be this, and you could do the padati and you'll be fine. Why? Because it's complicated. It's so complicated that even dullards like me will be able to feel something at the end of all of this. And I think it's wonderful to have a lot of complexity. And that's why people kind of balk at the complexity until they realize how simple it is to just do things based on the book and just like say the mantras and just like take 4 hours to do this thing. Because if you take 4 hours to do it, however hard it is, you might feel something from that like you won't be able to feel by like doing a 30-minute thing, and then you'll realize like, oh, actually maybe complexity makes certain things simpler, such that people like us, spiritual dullards, Kali Yuga type people whose minds are obfuscated by materiality, even we can feel something. That's why I love this idea that Sri Ramakrishna, if he is indeed the avatara, it's important that this avatara of this day and age started out with puja. And puja is, I think, something that is worth reviving, but also my contribution here is that I'm quite passionate about, which I'm becoming increasingly passionate about, is to show that puja is a range. It's not just right-hand path stuff. That's important, that's good, but there's a lot of other stuff in the puja world that I'd like to represent, like the Panchamakaras and things like that. So Sri Ramakrishna might have been doing mostly in the beginning right-hand path type puja because it was part of like a temple culture, and this is the first time that Kali, who is usually a left-hand path deity, to use those terms right and left glibly if you don't mind, this is the first time she's worshipped in this kind of context, thanks to Ramprasad and his popularization, thanks to Agama Vagisha Krishnananda. Anyway, not to get into overly academic or historical points here, it's just we're living in an interesting time where a Vamachara deity, a Kaulachara deity, a secret deity is now a public deity worshipped in a public temple serving the general community. So Sri Ramakrishna, I think, is starting out with some very right-hand path orthodox Śaiva Siddhānta type puja. Okay, but he learns this to the T, yes? He learns it to the T. Yeah, and then he plays with the rules. Like just like a great jazz musician who masters all the rules, then starts breaking them. Like that, he learns the puja to the T, and then as a spontaneous expression of his longing, which he's also cultivating through singing, dancing, praying, and communing, he's starting to like play with the puja. So now, during Arati, which is one part of the puja, he might fan mother for like hours, where before the whole thing might have been 15, 20 minutes. Now just for hours, he's waving the fan. So like things like Bhuta Shuddhi or the Dhyanam, meditating on Ma, the Manasa Puja, these are all like internal moments kind of nestled in the context of the greater ritual that you can choose to take your time with. And of course, they're like, I'm so excited to get into the offering mantras with you, because once you start offering items to Kali, there are these disclaimers that you chant also. Like say, before you offer, I don't know, like incense, you might say Vanaspatira Gandhadya Sumanohara. You're like apologizing. You're saying, Ma, I'm gonna wave incense in front of you. I've collected all the fragrances from all these trees, from the forests of sandalwood, and yet, how can I do this? Maya Niveditam Bhaktya. Like, forgive me, mother, for doing this, because aren't you the source of fragrance? Aren't you the source of all beauty? How can I offer beauty to that which is beauty's source? However, having recognized my folly, Maya Niveditam Bhaktya, I offer this with devotion. Please accept it. Those are beautiful mantras because each one reminds you who you're worshipping. and it protects you from duality. And I'm so excited to get into that stuff with you because the mantras are specific to the offering. Suprakasho Mahadeepa Sarvatasni Mirapaha Sabhaya Yantara Jyotir Deepayam Pratigriyatam. Oh mother, what a fool I am to give you light. Why am I waving light to you? You who are the light, you who are far beyond the light of the Agni, Jyotish, the Ravi, the sun, Chandra, the moon, Agni, the fire, meaning the Ida, Pingala, Shushumna, like that. You're beyond all of these. You're the light of consciousness. You are Suprakasho Mahadeepa, the good light, Suprakasha, the illumination of pure non-dual consciousness. Mahadeepa, the great lamp. Suprakasha Mahadeepa. Sarvatastimirapaha. You are the one who destroys all darkness. And here, like a fool, I wave this lamp in front of you. Maya nivedatam bhaktya. Having recognized my folly, having offered this with devotion, please accept it. See, like that, like again and again, each offering is, there's a disclaimer. Each offering is preceded by this like mantra. It's beautiful, you guys. The puja tradition is so rich and so beautiful, especially when you start translating this stuff, which I think is something I want to, like let me go out swinging and let me properly give out a good parati, before we croak our last. These are important traditions that will only survive because people like you are practicing them, not because people inherited them from their family and now like are making a living off of it. It's like, it's not salesmen that keep spirituality alive, although thank God for them too. But it's people like this, people who really love God and who feel puja to be a viable way of relating to God. Both like as a solitary practice, because notice puja lends itself to like private practice, but also, this is interesting, as a congregational practice. When I see photos from Denver in Kuleshwari's house, like how the heart soars. The whole world was shaken by like 12 or so fellas around a fire one night. They were having a literal sleepover at their friend's house, and they just decided to give their lives to God, and look what happened. How beautiful. And I think it ought to happen again. It's almost like how, it'd be so sad if we just settled in to what's here now. I remember once Gurudeva said to me, our job is to maintain what's here, your job is to move it forward, to push it forward. I was going to say move it or push it. I would say mush it forward. Our job is to mush it forward, which is like, yeah, we can have what we have now, and it served somebody. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the way it's translated now, is so important because it served somebody. It served a community. The Vedanta centers that we have around the US have served and continue to serve communities. But those aren't the only communities there are. And there's so many communities that what we have now cannot reach and will not reach. Maybe it's time for a change. It's time to push forward a little bit. And of course, doing so will be controversial, but let's have at it. At least I intend to. And so with that in mind, to see what's going on in Denver is so beautiful. Many people have fallen away, but then 4 people just sitting there in candlelight, having worshipped Ma, sharing a meal, a prasad meal. Oh my God, the world has been shaken with much less than that. Just 4 people in a room loving on God can mean the difference between, a viable tradition that includes more people and these things dying away. Like that's why what we're doing here to me has great significance. Because it's what Ramakrishna felt was a viable way to realize God. And true enough, he did do just that. But we have to remember, it's broader than just like offering the flowers. It's also singing, it's dancing, it's communing, which happens within the puja. So as a solitary practice or as a congregational practice, it's a really wonderful practice. Now, here's where it gets interesting. But then, there's nighttime. So all of this stuff is usually happening during the day, right? He's doing the puja, he's singing, he's dancing, he's like waving the yak tail whisk and all of that. But then nighttime comes. Sri Ramakrishna wanted to realize God. And that means he was willing to work for it. That's the thing. When we really want something, and very rarely do we want things, we don't develop our Ichcha Shakti. We're told by our society not to want anything. And so therefore we like get into this state where our wanting is very dim. So even when we want something, it's not with force that we want it. And so very rarely do we go the length to get it. Haven't you noticed in any field, not just spirituality, in athletics, in music, in business, the people who succeed like wildly in those fields are people who like really wanted it, whatever it is that they wanted, and they're willing, because of that wanting, because of that Ichcha Shakti, they're willing to go and acquire the requisite knowledge and do the requisite activity. So the Jnana and the Kriya Shakti was strong because the Ichcha Shakti was strong. There's a bit of a self-help secret there almost. So the Ichcha Shakti is the source of everything. We have to really want it. And Sri Ramakrishna, above all, was Ichcha Swarupa, the incarnation, the embodiment of yearning, like Chaitanya before him. So he wanted God so badly that he just didn't like sit around. Because we sit around a lot, and often because we don't have Kriya Shakti. We're not motivated. And why aren't we motivated? And because we don't have enough knowledge. Even if we want to do something, what will we do? So here we're learning something. We're getting jnana, we're getting knowledge, ideally. From God, not from me, from God. He's giving this parati and we're learning it. Now we have the knowledge, but even with the knowledge, how few of us will actually do puja? You know, Kalidasi is doing puja every day now, which is awesome. And so many people have the parati, but they're not doing the puja. Even simple Kali puja, like 5-10 minutes a day, they can't do. And why not? Because there's no itcha. If the itcha is there, if you really want God, if you're hungry, if you're yearning for God, and who knows why we yearn for God? You know, I'm thinking about this recently too, where I'm just like, even the people who maybe are kind of put off by this community and my message, like they love God actually. But each of us feels that, but we need something different to help us articulate that. But why we feel that, we don't know. Why we're here, we don't know. But we are. We made it somehow. We are here and we love God. And this is just a tradition that found us. Insert maybe some past life explanation here, but we just call it grace. It's by grace that we want God. And by God, I don't just mean Kali, I mean God. It's grace that we want God. It's wonderful that we want God and we think of God as Kali. And it's even more wonderful that we now have a tried and true method, which is inclusive of all dispositions in Tantra for realizing Kali. There are many places where you can't do Vamachara stuff. And that's fine. Some people will be served by that. But there's also Vamachara stuff, you know, that also exists. That's also part of the Tantric tradition. And so this is the goal here is to provide as broad and as inclusive a Tantric tradition so that everyone can find their place within it and do this. Relate to God in the form that they like best, Kali, Bhairava, etc. So having said this, having said all of this, you have to remember, nighttime meant that Sri Ramakrishna didn't just sit around. He went into the jungle, and he went to the smashan, and he went to all these places where you could be alone. It was almost like in the daytime there was this like extroverted, not extrovert, I shouldn't say extrovert, it's still kind of indrawn, but it's like celebratory, it's like kind of active, but the nighttime was somewhat contemplative. And doesn't, again, be careful, I'm not saying daytime is active, nighttime is contemplative, it could be reversed, it could be mixed, I don't know, but what was true for Ramakrishna is that at night he would go and sit under a particular kind of tree. Again, why he chose that tree is because of the Tantric tradition. Because there's like a specific tree that's auspicious for this type of sadhana. The things in the world, they're not actually out there in the world. They're in here in consciousness. So they're thoughts actually. And so what we're doing, this is a very deep point, is that we're aligning ourselves with a particular galaxy of thoughts at the exclusion of other galaxies that we can visit. Viranatha might like this metaphor. But it's like the spaceship of the mind, it can go anywhere, but we're choosing to be in this galaxy, in this consortium of thoughts, which includes items, objects. You know, so certain kinds of skulls, certain kinds of trees, certain kinds of seeds, certain kinds of colors. They're all included within this galaxy actually, not just like mantras and ideas and concepts and people. So coming into the galaxy of Kali, there are certain trees in the Shaiva world that we value. You know, my house, I grew up in this household surrounded by bell trees. It's like almost like a fence. You know how some celebrities have fences for paparazzis? I was like a fence to keep out Vaishnavas. No, I'm kidding. Now in my life, I'm realizing the wisdom of that. If you let Vaishnavas into a Shaiva space, they might have a problem with it. So I need more bell trees. You know how you have to fence the sapling? Yeah, in our house. Oh my God, the whole house. And one day, hopefully, you'll visit. You know, either I end up in El Salvador or I end up back home. Maybe the sky thy roof, the grass thy bed. But wherever I end up, I hope you'll get a chance to go home to Shivapura and see what my grandfather built. Because, oh my God, around the whole property are these trees. And they're sacred to Lord Shiva. They're bell trees. And you know, this is so special, so moving. They never fruited. They for whatever reason, you could get the leaves, no problem. Oh, and there's one that we have next to the Shiva Lingam. It's called a Mahavilva Patra, which is 5-stemmed. It's not 3 leaves, it's 5, which is kind of interesting. It's like special. It's 5 is also, it's important for Shaivism. But anyway, having said all of this, what's really beautiful is they wouldn't fruit. You know, you get bell fruits. And Sri Ramakrishna often used the bell fruit as one of his examples for Vishishta Advaita or for showing the fullness of reality. But anyway, you know, you get these fruits and they're medicinal. Shaivas will sometimes like cut them in half, scrape out the insides and like dry them and use them as kapalas. Or I remember like putting basma, you can have it as a case for your basma. And then it's a special fruit for Shaivas, right? But our trees didn't fruit until my grandfather kicked the body, which was so beautiful. Like after he left, suddenly all the Vilva trees like fruited, which was great. So they're medicinal, they can be very bitter actually. But in any case, they're sacred to Shiva, and the bell tree, because it's sacred to Shiva, is sacred to Parvati, to Kali. So meditating under a Vilva tree or meditating near Vilva is very, very special. And if you go to the Belur Math headquarters for the Ramakrishna mission, you'll notice Swamiji used to like sitting under bel trees by his place, where his temple, where, just an Om, there's no Murti. Downstairs there's a Murti, but upstairs there's no Murti. There's a bel tree nearby, and that's the tree he used to like to sit under and meditate, and it's right next to the smashan. So in Belur Math, there's a smashan. Not many people know this, but there's a smashan in Belur Math where the direct disciples were cremated. The ones who, died at that time, they were cremated there. And next to that smashan is Swamiji's temple. And Swamiji, as you know, has a connection to Shiva. And next to Swamiji's temple, between the smashan and the temple, is a bel tree. And Swamiji liked to sit and meditate under that bel tree. There's also a mango tree inside, but anyway, we don't need to get into it now. The point, though, is that there are certain trees that the tantric tradition considers sacred. So Sri Ramakrishna didn't just randomly choose a tree. He could have. All trees are sacred. But because he was doing a specific kind of sadhana, he was doing Kali sadhana along the lines of the tantric tradition that preceded him, he respected the rules of that sadhana. I shouldn't say rules, the logic of that sadhana. The whole universe is based on the Vedas. The tantric world is not new. It's a reinterpretation of, a deeper understanding of, and a revelation, a re-revelation of the Vedas. It's the re-up at the rave. And so Sri Ramakrishna doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. He's willing here, as you can see, to just do the tradition, which tells him to meditate under a particular kind of tree. So he chooses that tree. So Amalaki, right? The Amla tree. We had one in my house also, the Amla tree. And now, later in my life, I'm starting to understand why my grandfather chose the trees that he chose. And in this place in Oxnard, by the way, we're trying to recreate this and choose certain trees that would be important for that particular kind of sadhana. So anyway, there was an amla tree, and I remember as a kid I used to love going and playing at that amla tree. I would eat the amla, of course, because I loved the gooseberry, but I would play under the amla tree and really enjoy myself there. And it was a spooky looking tree even. But Sri Ramakrishna would sit under one of those, he would sit under a bel tree, and then later we know that he constructed a Panchavati with the 5 sacred trees of the tradition. But right now he didn't have that yet. At this point, he didn't have a Panchavati, he just sat under the bel tree. And what did he do? All night long, there's only one thing that he cared about doing, chanting the mantra. So notice there's puja, right, which he did in the daytime. With the puja comes singing and dancing and all the other bhakti yoga type things like praying and whatnot. But then at night came arguably the most central practice in the tantric world, and definitely in our lineage because of Holy Mother's interpretation, japa. Japa means recitation of the mantra, and that's literally all it is. You just sit and you close your eyes, or your eyes are open, doesn't matter, and you just chant the living daylights and the living night lights, I guess, out of your mantra. Which mantra? Again, you know what? It could really be any mantra, because in the puja tradition, you get so many mantras, and you could just take one of those mantras and do japa with it. So some people, legit, they do japa with Jayanti Mangala Kali, Bhadra Kali, Kapalini, Durga, Shiva, Kshama, Datri, Swaha, Swada, Namaste. That's one beat. Second beat. Jayanti Mangala Kali, Bhadra Kali, Kapalini, Durga, Shiva, Kshama, Datri, Swaha, Swada, Namaste. Second beat. Third beat. And you should know this, back in the day, in the Shaiva in the beginnings of the tradition, it's very likely that the japa mantra was the Shri Rudram. I kid you not, the whole Sri Rudram might have been the thing that they did japa with, meaning they would chant the whole thing and then do a bead, if they even used beads at that time. So they would start with Om Ganana Antva Ganapate Gomavamahe Kavim Kavinam Ovamashravastamam and just go through the whole Sri Rudram. It's 8 minutes? 30 minutes, right? Depending on how fast you are. So 30 minutes, one repetition. Isn't that crazy? How long would it take you to do 108? Well, they had the time. They were just sitting in the smashan all day and all night anyway, so might as well use a really long mantra. So the whole Sri Rudram, oh my god. But also it's likely that they did the Pancha Brahma mantra. So every mantra in the Pancha Brahma mantra, if you chant all 5 at once, that's one repetition. So you start with Sadyojatam Prapadyami, Sadyoja. So it was wonderful to see Grasini in the Ashland cremation ground. We spent all night there in the cremation ground like our ancestors, like the first of us. At the Dhuni, like our ancestors. And like our ancestors, Garasini just chanted the 5 Shiva mantras. And that really moved me because that was the original, the tradition started with that, with those 5 mantras. And learning those 5 mantras is so important because that's what starts the tradition. So I'm starting to think we should have those mantras, by the way. Those 5 foundational Pancha Brahma, Shaiva mantras. I'm just going to say now, those of you who are practicing this tradition, it's not necessary, but nowadays I'm thinking just from recent experiences and me trying to grow as in this position that I'm in, it's I think they're important. I think it'd be good if we just all every day chanted the Pancha Brahma mantras. and we'll go over them later. But they're from the Vedas, so they're like Vedic mantras. They're Sajjojata mantra. Then you do Vamadeva mantra. Then you do Aghora mantra, Tatpurusha mantra, and Ishana mantra. These are 5 of them, right? And one of them you probably know pretty well. Tatpurushaya vidmahe mahadevaya dhimahi tanno rudra prachodayat. This is the Shiva Gayatri mantra, which is used in Shiva Puja a lot. But also you might know Aghorebhyo, Taghorebhyo, Ghora Ghora, Tarebhyaha. So I use that one a lot because that's the Dakshinamnaya to which we belong. So anyway, there are all these 5 mantras. And you should learn them because probably the first of us were doing just that only. They were just chanting those 5 mantras. Of course, there's also Trambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam, which appears in the Yajurveda, among other places. So that could be a puja mantra, it could be a japa mantra, or a tarpana mantra. But then there's also another mantra, the central mantra of the entire tradition, which is the mantra I first received anyway. And of course that mantra is in the middle of the Yajurveda. It's in the middle of the Sri Rudram. The Sri Rudram is in the middle of the Yajurveda, and in the middle of the Sri Rudram is this mantra, the Panchakshari. And the Panchakshari, of course, is the foundational mantra par excellence. Yeah, and the Mahamrityunjaya Kalidasi is saying, save my life. That's what it's for, actually. It saves lives. Thick thighs save lives, and so too does the Mahamrityunjaya. It's a very powerful mantra, And you can chant it. It can be a japa mantra. So there are these long japa mantras. Oh my God, at the end of the Chandi, just for fun, does anybody want to guess what the japa mantra was for those 2 guys in the Markandeya Purana and the Chandi? Like, do you know what japa they were doing? Just for fun. They learned the Chandi, right, from the Rishi, from Medas Muni, and then after that they went to the bank of the river and allegedly they constructed a clay image of Kali, of Chandika, or however you want to think of Ma, and they worshipped, they did puja to that clay image, and then they chanted this mantra, this japa mantra. Hint, it's from the Rig Veda. Do you know what it is? It's one of the most ancient proclamations of non-duality of all time. For 500 points, Sangha, what is the mantra? It's not the Gayatri, interestingly. It's something else. Gayatri is a very important mantra, but it's not.
Kleem Chamundaya Vich.
Oh, that's a good guess, actually, but no, not yet, because that maybe doesn't even show up until much later with the tantric tradition. It's from the Siddha Kunjika Stotram that we get that mantra, and that mantra is claimed to be the essence of the Chandi. So, I am Hrim Kleem Chamundaya Viche, Om Glom Hom Kleem Jum Sa, Jwalaya Jwalaya, Jwala Prajwala Prajwala, I am Hrim Kleem Chamundaya Viche, Jwalaham Sanglang Shang Pat Swaha. That section there, according to Shivji, in the Siddha Kunjika Stotram, that's the whole Chandi. You can chant the whole Chandi in just that. And I don't know how to do this, but we've seen Gujarati worshippers do the whole Chandi in just bija form. I've never learned that, but like apparently the whole Chandi you can just chant bijas for it instead of chanting like Tvam Swaha, Tvam Swadaha, Tvam Hi. There are bijas embedded. There are some people who have like derived those bijas, and they're all like weird and different bijas than we're used to. But they chant the whole thing, and it sounds like gibberish, and it sounds like speaking in tongues or something, because the words are just bijas. They don't have any linguistic meaning the way Tvam Swaha, Tvam Swadaha, Tvam Hi would. Okay, but that being said, yeah, the whole Chandi can be reduced to 3 bijas. Aim, Hrim, Kleem. Or you can flip them. Kleem, Hrim, Aim. So that the whole thing can just be these bijas. And that's what so much of the Śākta tradition is premised on, these bijas. Anyway, all of that aside, I shouldn't be saying bijas aloud. I just want to note that was pretty uncouth of us to say these mantras aloud. But a lot of times I'm like, fuck it, But I just want you to know that the tradition is very careful about this kind of thing. They're saying, instead of saying Aim, just say Shrishti Bija. Instead of saying Hrim, say Lajja Bija. Instead of saying Kleem, say Kama Bija. Like that. To refer to a Bija, we refer to it elliptically. Kurcha Bija, Kriya Bija, Lajja, Hrit Bija, like that. We don't say the Bija aloud. But I'm happy to say it now. Just in the context of chanting mantras, notice there's so many mantras you could chant. But these are more modern. I'm talking about like Vedic mantras. Yajurveda gives you Sri Rudram. It gives you the 5 mantras, Panchabrahma mantras. It gives you the Panchakshari. Those are likely what people were chanting. But what about the Chandi? Like what's the mantra that they chant on the banks of the Ganga as part of their japa? Any guesses? No, it's not that one. Interestingly, it's not a tantric. There are no bijas. It's funny. There's no bijas in this mantra because it's not yet a tantric practice. Again, I shouldn't say that. I can back up on that and say no. It's still tantric. It's interesting. It's not even the Chandi because arguably, yes, thank you, Mahadeva. It's the Suktam. It's the Devi Suktam, which is from the Rig Veda. It's 8 verses. 8 verses attributed to a daughter of a sage. And she gave us these 8 verses on the Divine Mother. herself speaking as the Divine Mother. She was like, I who am the wind that blows, I make the ones who are smart smart. By my grace, they become great scholars. Like that. She speaks as the goddess in first person. And those 8 hymns, that's the mantra that they would chant. And each time they finish the 8 verses, that's one bead. And then the second bead. And then like that. Like it's so simple. Like there's no set mantra that you're supposed to do. It's just taking one thing and repeating it. And you see in the Christian tradition, there's Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. That's one way. You can do, in the Orthodox tradition, they say, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me. Again and again, they just repeat that. Or the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. And they just do that again and again and again. So I just want to explain the logic of japa. It's so beautiful. You just take something, a prayer or a name, and then you just repeat it again and again and again until it becomes part of your being, until it becomes effortless for you, until in your dreams you start to hear it, until your very blood starts to tingle with it. And then we say you become the mantra. So now the idea of a mantra or a vidya is like a living being that is your protector. Mananat trayate iti mantra. And by chanting it, you learn to resonate like it and become it. And the whole world arguably starts to resonate like it. And then you recognize the mantra as your essential nature, as the essential reality of the world. And it could be any mantra, because all mantras lead to that same realization. Yes, as Deepa Leela is saying, to feel the buzz all over. So anyway, we get very complicated and very important linguistic mystical theories here, sound theories. The claim is that, these Pancha Brahma mantras, they are Shiva's body. There's another mantra, you might be familiar, we chanted it in Denver together. It's from the Raurava Agama. It's called the Vyoma Vyapine mantra. Again, a very important Śaiva Siddhānta mantra. And in it, this is so interesting, the names of those Pancha Brahma mantras are mentioned, but also mentioned is a kind of early nyasa, where like each name is attributed to a part of Lord Shiva's body. So you might touch your own body as you chant those mantras. And more importantly, as you chant those mantras, you are congealing Lord Shiva's body. So you could say these are the 5 faces of Lord Shiva, but really from the Vyoma Vyapane, it's like the 5 parts of Shiva's body. Like early Shadanga kind of idea, And interestingly, the claim is being made here that the mantras together are Lord Shiva's body. Like if you chant all 5 mantras, that's how you get Lord Shiva. So each time you repeat the 5 mantras, it's a repetition. 1 repetition is 5 mantras. You've said that mantra for Lord Shiva. Because you've conjured him. You've built him up in your sonic body. And he is nothing but those mantras. Shiva is mantra. And even Jaimini, in the Purva Mimamsaka tradition, will make this claim that there's no difference between the mantra and the deity to whom the mantra is ascribed. In Atlanta, I think at 4 a.m, after Viranatha sent me a spicy poem, I think we're texting about this in the group, right? Whether or not Indra will come to my house or your house. Because I had started a Homa, you guys had started a Homa, we were at different fires, and I was joking, I was making a classical Indian philosophy joke that didn't really land. I was like, I wonder whose home Indra is going to go to. See, and then I had to explain why that was funny. I had to push my glasses up my nose and be like, well, actually, if you really were geeking out about Indian philosophy like me, you would know that Jaimini asked this question when he asked, well, whose house does Indra go to if 2 people at the same time chant his mantra at a fire? It's an important question because it's about the relationship between the word and the meaning, between Shabda and Artha. And what we learn in Tantra is important, that there is no relationship between the word and the meaning because it's an identity. Whatever relationship is there, it's a relationship of identity. The mantra is the being. So when we say Kali Vidya, we're talking about the Vidya, the mantra, but that's synonymous with Kali. So to receive Kali Vidya is to receive Kali. So to chant the Pancha Brahma mantras is to practice Shaivism. It's to receive Shiva, but more importantly, to become Shiva. You yourself are a mantra, but you're tuned to some like other stuff. And now you get on the spaceship and you leave that galaxy and come to this new galaxy and you acclimate to it. You tune to this new thing until you realize you're the universe that contains all the galaxies. But you choose one. You choose one star cluster or something. You're like, this is Kali or this is Shiva. And these are the mantras. They're Kali Dasi with the rocket ships. Rocket Queen is over there. I love the 1987 album Appetite for Destruction. What a great hymn to Kali. Right? You know where you are? You're in the jungle, baby. You gonna die. That's how it must have felt for those who were in the smashan, who were in the jungle, or by the side of the river. All they had to trust was providence. At least now, my providence comes in the form of the kindness of strangers in cafes. But back then, what cafe is there? What strangers are there? What Zoom meeting is there? What friends are there? It's just you and Ma. You and Ma in the eternal night and the uncertainty of the smashan. You know where you are? You're in Kali sadhana, baby. You're gonna die. I hope the riff just started playing in everyone's head. Anyway, this is so important though that like Shaivism, when it comes to japa, probably thought about the Sri Rudram or thought about the 5 Panchabrahma mantras and about the Panchakshari as like the japa mantras. Then the Śākta tradition, which builds off of this, will use the Devi Suktam for japa. So like again, you can use the Chandi. Some people, their whole sadhana is to chant the Chandi. And repeat the Chandi. Maybe 700 verses, they chant it and then go again. And then go again. Anyway, what's happened is over the years, we've streamlined. So from like say the Rudram, we go to the Panchabrahma mantras. From the Panchabrahma mantras, we go to the Panchakshari. So now the 5 syllables of the Panchakshari represent the 5 Brahma mantras, which represents the Rudram, which represents the Yajurveda, which represents the reality of all things from this particular vantage point. So that being said, the mantra can be very simple. And we don't know what mantra Sri Ramakrishna got from his guru. We can make a guess given the status of Bengali Tantra at that time, and it's very likely the mantra that many of you are using. But then when he got that mantra, at night, this is very important, he would sit under a particular kind of tree, and with a particular kind of rosary, again, the material of the rosary is important. Like, it's probably a Rudraksh, and we saw it, by the way, in M's house. They have Sri Ramakrishna's mala. So he was chanting on a Rudraksh. Although Ram Prasad, his predecessor, might have been chanting on bone. We don't know whether or not Sri Ramakrishna chanted on bone. We really don't know. He could have done so many things hitherto undiscovered. Who knows? He probably did all the things. As my guru once pointed out, left hand, right hand, this hand, that hand. There's nothing that Sri Ramakrishna didn't do. And in left-handed tantra, sometimes we like bone malas. Made of human bones, ideally, but also buffalo bones, because Durga kills the buffalo demon, or goat bones, or yak bones, or something like bones. Bones are important. Because the vibration of that bone probably has something to do with Kali. The vibration of Rudraksh, that particular kind of seed, has something to do with Kali or Shiva. Anyway, with that mala, either held in his right or left hand, and these days I tend to exclusively use my left hand to chant on malas, but often we learn in the beginning to use our right hand. In either case, with one hand holding a mala, he chanted this mantra that he got from his guru all night long. He could have gotten it from Ram Kumar, his older brother. Maybe he got it from Kedaram Bhattacharya. Maybe he got it from the book. Maybe he got it from Tarak Dada's father. Like Tarak Dada, Swami Shivananda, his father was one of Sri Ramakrishna's tantric gurus. It's interesting. Maybe he got it because, he used to be at Dakshineshwar sitting in the 5 skulls asana, the Panchamundi asana, performing Kali sadhana, meditating on the Divine Mother in the Smashan. From him, Sri Ramakrishna learned something. He revered this man as his guru. And in fact, later, when Swami Shivananda came to him as a disciple, he refused to take personal service from Tarak Dada. Because his father, Tarak Dada's father, was one of Sri Ramakrishna's many gurus. It's very interesting kind of like leela there between Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Shivananda Puri, not Saraswati. Okay, having said all of this, let's now turn to Puraścaraṇa. Japa is so important. But what mantra you use for japa is maybe, this is so crazy, I'm just going to say something crazy if you don't mind, is maybe not that big of a deal. People make a very big deal of it, right? It's like, because, I don't know, it's like religion. It's like, there's like control and there's power and then who gives the mantra, Diksha Guru, and like all that stuff is fine. But notice a lot of the stuff that we're noticing on the internet right now, like some of the backlash in our community has to do with this understanding of mantra japa and guru diksha and all of that, which might be more religious than spiritual and might even be more modern than we're ready to admit. A lot of this like dialogue around mantras is not necessarily traditional, which is really kind of interesting to note. That it's a modern interpretation of an ancient tradition, in which I was born into, by the way. It's a modern interpretation of an ancient tradition by which communities are now held. It's a very interesting thing. So what is the mantra? Again, every mantra has the same meaning. Whether mantra or vidya, they all mean God. And they could be long or they could be short. It's not the mantra as much as chanting it that matters, because as we will soon see in the Puraścaraṇa tradition, whether or not you got the mantra from someone in whom the mantra is awakened, meaning whether or not the mantra has mantra chaitanya or mantra virya, your Puraścaraṇa will give it that. You will be able to bring the mantra to life, as it were, or reveal the innate life of the mantra through Puraścaraṇa. So even if you get it from a book, which I know the Kularnava Tantra warns you not to do, for reasons we discussed in that other lecture, but like, even if you get it from the internet or from a book, or you like accidentally heard it, like offhand, somebody said it around you and you liked it, it's okay. You can use that because with your Puraścaraṇa, you'll bring it to life. So even if it's a dead mantra because you got it from a book or something, It's okay. That's not the case. No mantra is dead. All mantras are living. And to awaken the mantra for you, it's already awake. It's just about recognizing it or inviting it even. Mantrana means to bring something into your being or to invite something. It's just a matter of doing Puraścaraṇa, which I'm going to explain in a little bit. So we do say, though, that you'll get more out of a mantra that you received from a person, and the claim that we make here is a mystical claim because that person has awakened that mantra through their life sadhana. So if they're a highly evolved spiritual person, they'll be able to give you a mantra which is already awakened, and then when you get it, it will feel different. I remember like there were some mantras which I knew before from just being in this world, and then being in the tantric world, and then receiving them in the context of diksha from lineage holders, and that same mantra which I knew before now gained a new sanctity. Maybe it's all psychological, but what isn't, right? Like what's not in your mind? So arguably, even if this is a placebo or it's psychological or whatever, who cares? Who cares? It's the same mantra that I heard before. Now I'm getting it from somebody. And as Mahadevaji and I were talking about it in the Smashan, it's like uncanny sometimes because there's some confirmation that says this is coming from Kali, not from the person, because there's something about the mantra that we get or the way that we get it or the instruction that we get around it which corroborates with some intuition or something. There's sometimes some mystical things like this where you dream that somebody gives you a mantra and then in real life it's the same mantra. This used to happen to Holy Mother a lot. Or you just knew a mantra and you don't know how you knew the mantra, and then suddenly somebody gives you that mantra. Or somebody gives you a mantra and then you chant that mantra and then suddenly you remember a different mantra. And then that person is like, okay, now use that new mantra. It's really mysterious. This is where philosophy kind of breaks down and mysticism and like spirituality starts. And there you can't really say anything. It's all just very personal and very sacred and very beautiful. But between us and God only. Not between any one human or any other human, but between us and God. Now, saying that, Sri Ramakrishna had a mantra. And with that mantra, just between him and God, he chanted it. All night long he would chant it. So much so that his mala was worn down with his chanting. What was he doing? We argue it's Puraścaraṇa. We argue that what he was working on is Puraścaraṇa. But, when you read the Lila Prasanga, you learn about this, and then later you learn about a second phase in his tantric sadhana. And it's just so remarkable to me that the two phases in Sri Ramakrishna's life, where it comes to Tantra, is remarkably like the historical phases of Tantra over the millennia. Because the beginning, arguably, is some really like crazy, intuitive, smashan kind of thing. And then it becomes this Śaiva Siddhānta institutional kind of thing. And then it goes back to being this crazy, intuitive, smashan kind of thing. It's like this wonderful hero's journey. Except going through this whole institutional, traditional, orthodox thing meant that when you come out the other side, it's much deeper. So the institution is based on these early smashan intuitives. And then when we go back into the smashan, whether actually or symbolically, it's after all this culturing and like orthodox Vedic living, as it were. So what Sri Ramakrishna is doing now is he goes from this first phase, which is like temple worship, probably along orthodox kind of right-hand path lines. I don't know, but maybe. And it couldn't be that right-hand because they're still killing goats for Kali. I'm sorry, but they used to do Bali. Up until recently, they were killing goats for Kali because that's Kali. It's like, if we have a problem with Bali, like that's something we should take up with Kali, talk to the boss. But in any case, the Bali was being performed. Sri Ramakrishna at one point couldn't bear to see it even. He just felt kind of squeamish about it. Swamiji said, what's wrong with a little bit of blood to complete the picture, Haladari disagreed with the Bali and his son died. Kali came to him in a dream and said, don't mess with the Bali. Like, you don't understand what you're talking about, leave it alone. And Haladari continued to make fun of the Bali and have a problem with the Bali, and then his son tragically died, and he thinks it's Ma Kali kind of punishing him, as it were. Not that Kali would ever do that. This is his own interpretation. Obviously, it was for his own spiritual good, but maybe he's learning what Bali means, what this world is like. Maybe he's criticizing Bali because he doesn't understand samsara, about anyway. I'm not going to argue now for the meaning of Bali. I've done it many times and will continue to do it many times. It's something I will defend. But in any case, however left-hand the temple was, it's still an institution, and naturally it serves a greater community than just a small band of specialized worshippers. Having said that, Sri Ramakrishna then goes on to the second phase of Tantra sadhana, and that's when he meets his first, arguably serious guru, because everyone else, he just kind of learned here and there from them. He didn't really keep up a relationship with Kedarnath Bhattacharya beyond getting the mantra. Even Ram Kumar, he must have learned a lot from him and had a very deep personal connection. That was his mentor in so many ways. But then, he kicked the body, his father, his family gurus, there's a lot of things there. But it wasn't until he met Bhairavi Brahmani that he takes up tantric practice in this whole new way. Now that was properly speaking left-hand path. That was like super left-hand path. So left-hand path that it had to be performed like quietly in the Panchavati. And we were talking about this last week also, how he constructed his Panchamundi asana twice. The first one had 3 skulls, I think, or maybe the first one had 5. I don't remember. But the second one maybe had 3 or 5. But he has 2 Panchamundis, right? And they've been destroyed. They've since been like kind of decommissioned. But back then, he had to build a second one, and I was arguing it's because the first one was too public. It was too public a place to do the kinds of things that he needed to do. So he built a second one in private, and that's where he does all the crazy things that you can read about in the Leela Prasanga, which involve like eating the fish curry from the skull bowl and consort practices. And he does the Shodashi Puja for the first time here with a different woman that Bhairavi Brahmani brings to him, which is very interesting and something that not a lot of people know about. But this world that Sri Ramakrishna practiced is, properly speaking, a left-hand path world, but it's one that he learned from Bhairavi Brahmani. So this is where, in the Leela Prasanga, we learn that he performed Puraścaraṇa. Arguably, he was already doing that, but maybe it wasn't until now that he like really truly gave himself to Puraścaraṇa. And arguably, the Puraścaraṇas that he's doing are now with mantras that Bhairavi Brahmani is supplying to him. She's a kind of liminal and very difficult to understand character because her Ishta was Gopala, which maybe might stun some people because she's dressed in red, she's a tantric nun, it's kind of confusing here. And what is she teaching Sri Ramakrishna? Is it Pancharatra Vaishnava Tantra? If so, it's a very extreme left-hand form of it. I don't know. This is Bengal. It's a wild place of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and Gaudiya Shaktism all commingling. Who knows? In any case, though, this Bhairavi is a very learned person. And I think that's the danger. It's like when people become very learned, like Abhinavagupta and whatnot, they also attract a lot of scorn because a lot of these people were also, because of their learning, revolutionaries, or they're willing to explore things because of like a sort of intellectual, it's not recklessness, it's courage, an intellectual kind of quest for something. So Abhinavagupta, for instance, he had to be very private about his Kaula stuff, being, of course, court Brahmin. And so a lot of these people did a lot of this stuff in secret, and only recently do we have research and stuff about Sri Ramakrishna's tantric sadhana. But what I want to point you to in the Leela Prasanga is this. Although he's doing like a bunch of other stuff, right? Like he's doing consort practices and all these other kinds of things. Mainly though he's doing Puraścaraṇa. That's it. Like whether it's left or right, whether it's Vaishnava or Hindu or Buddhist, whether it's Shaiva or Śākta or whatever, it's still going to be Puraścaraṇa. That's the main thing that we do in Tantra. So just for fun, let me just quickly walk you through that process. You start with choosing a mantra. And maybe the mantra is chosen for you in the context of maybe the guru suggesting a mantra. It might not be the only one though. It might be one of several mantras that you will do Puraścaraṇa for. And in the Sri Vidya tradition, you start with Ganesh, then you move on to Matangi Varahi type things after, like you do Bala Tripura Sundari, and then there's a Matangi Varahi kind of section, and then you do Panchadashi, and then you do Shodashi, and then you do the 28 syllable Maha Shodashi. A lot of like kind of steps are required. In any case, though, it looks like this. It's just repeating that mantra a certain number of times. It's a fixed number of times typically. So in our Ramakrishna tradition, especially in the Hollywood temple, there's like a modern interpretation of this, where instead of fixing the number, you just follow the moon. This is called Chandra Nayana Vrat, and it's based on this old Vedic convention where it's like you fast in this way. You in the full moon take 16 or 15, I forget, handfuls of rice. That's what you eat on the full moon. And again, I'm not prescribing this practice. I've never myself done it. But then from that, you start decreasing the amount of rice by 1 palmful for every day of the waning moon. So by the time you get to the new moon, you're like at 0, at 1 or at 0. So you've like fasted, gradually you've reduced your food intake until you fast on the new moon. So Shivaratri or the new moon, you're perfectly fasting and most spiritually sensitive. Upabhasa, it's called. Then, this is interesting, you don't just go and eat a big meal. Like you slowly work your way back up. So first day of the waxing moon, you take 1 handful. Second day, 2 handfuls. Third day, 3 handfuls. Fourth day, 4 until you get to 16 again. And so like notice how wise this is. It's gradual, it's gentle. It's not like, okay, I will fast. It's Shivaratri, okay, I'll fast. Hare, if you've never fasted before, suddenly you decide on Shivaratri to fast, you'll be dizzy, you'll be nauseous, you'll ruin your whole Shivaratri if you don't have any preparation with that kind of thing. But that's how people do life. I mean, it's haphazard, it's violent, it's based on what the mind wants and not necessarily what the body understands or can do. And that's fine. That's very much a feature of our modern era. But back then in the Vedic period, they had a kind of compassion and logic that I think is worth reinvesting in. So if you're going to do Puraścaraṇa, you can do it this way. You could say, okay, I have a mantra, maybe one that I chose, or one that my guru gave me, or one that I like. And now on the full moon, I'll start on the new moon. Let me chant one mala of it. So we don't count 108, we just count 100. We just say one mala. The unit, the measuring unit here is one mala. So we say, okay, I'll count one mala on the new moon. Then on the first day, Pratipada, waxing moon, 2 malas. On the third day, 3 malas. On the fourth day, 4 malas. On the fifth day, 5 malas. And you go all the way up to maybe 15 or 16 malas. And then you come back down. Isn't that so beautiful? And I asked my guru one time, I was like, but why would you want to come down? If you've slowly built your stamina up to 15 or 16, shouldn't we stay there? And Gurudeva was like, for most of us, it's hard to maintain that. You might start feeling the difficulty past 8 or 9, depending on where you are in your sadhana. It might start to get difficult towards the full moon. And at the full moon, it might require so much time and you might feel strained that it's a relief to come back down. But we don't just drop, we slowly ease our way back down. So in the Hollywood temple, since maybe Swami Prabhavananda, I don't really know when they started this there, but there's a tradition there where they do this Chandranayana type, Puraścaraṇa. So instead of fixing a number, they just go up and down with the moon. And I used to do that. For years I did that. Every month I would do this kind of Puraścaraṇa. Just go up and come down. Go up and come down. I would use almost exclusively an arithmetic progression, which is 1, then +1, then +1, then +1, then +1. And every month I would start at a higher number. So the first time I tried this, I started at 10 malas and then slowly worked my way up to 26 malas. And the next month I started at 11 malas. And the month after that I started at 12 malas. And sometimes on special months, like say Ramakrishna's birthday month or something, I would start at say 20 malas or 30 malas, depending on how much time I had or what my work schedule was like. And not only that, I also learned that when I missed days, because sometimes people are very regimented with this kind of thing where they're like, whoa, this is day 5, I should be doing 15 malas. But I don't know, today was different from the other days and I wasn't able to do any malas. Okay, what do? Did you cancel your Chandranayana? Do you start from scratch? What do? I learned from Swami Swahanandaji that you can just make it up. So then what ended up happening was I would miss a bunch of days, and then on the weekends or something like that, when I had more time or when my schedule would clear up, I would just make up the malas that I missed. So if I show you some of my calendars, you'll see that it looks like a crazy person's calendar. It is a crazy person's calendar. But there are all these numbers and circles, days where I missed, and I would add them up, and I'm there looking at a calendar with my phone calculator, trying to math my way to God. As it were. So remember, you can't buy God like you would buy a fish at a fish market. It's not like a certain number of mantra will automatically reveal God. It's not what we're saying. We're just saying that the Puraścaraṇa tradition can be interpreted in many different ways. But generally, when we look at the texts, some of these modern interpretations aside, which are again still very valuable, when we look at the text, it seems like we set a number. Or the text sets a number. The Bhagala Padati that some of you have, it's got 800,000 as its number. But generally speaking, it's going to be a million, right? 1 lakh, 1 million, 100,000 repetitions over 10 days will become 1 million. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. It's 100,000 repetitions of the mantra, 1 lakh, right? Bye, Dimitri, Jaima. 1 lakh is 100,000. But, oh, I'm so sorry, the Bhagalamukhi is not 100,000, it's 80,000, not 800,000, it's 80,000. So it's just short of 1 lakh, right? But that's what that tantra says. So that tantra, that specific tantra that I shared with you some time ago, the Bhagala Tantra, in that tantra it says, the Puraścaraṇa for Bhagalamukhi with this mantra, the 36 syllable mantra, the Sarvadushtana, Vachamukam, Padam, Stambhaya, that mantra is 80,000 lakhs. So, guys, 80,000 repetitions, so just under 1 lakh. But most of the time it's going to be about 1 lakh, right? 1 lakh meaning 100,000 repetitions. So generally that's the amount, not always, but generally. Now, I think we have millennia of catching up to do. Right? So thousands of years of tradition, so we should be compassionate. But it's simple, actually. It's so simple because you just take one mantra and you just chant it all the time or at set times until you get to your goal, your mantra goal. So it's generally going to be 100,000 repetitions. Now, for every 100,000 repetitions that you do through japa, we're invited to offer 10% of that. So this is the 10% rule that you find across the board in many different tantras. Again, this is just generalizing in the tantric sense, just looking at a bunch of texts and saying broadly speaking, this is what it looks like. But it might be different per your lineage, per your text, per your even interpretation. It could be different for different people. But I'm just going to say generally, what we understand now in modern tantra is that it's a 10% rule. If I chanted 100,000 repetitions in japa, then I owe 10% of that in homa. So this brings me to the next ritual. as part of the Puraścaraṇa system or sequence, having chanted 100,000 malas, you now, not necessarily after, even during, while you work on those 100,000, you should be doing this also. You're gonna do the same thing, except now in front of a fire, and then you're gonna offer into the fire the mantra. If the mantra doesn't already have a swaha, and many Shakti mantras will, then you add your swaha after it. So if you're doing Panchakshari, you say Namah Shivaya and then you say swaha, and then you put the oblation to the fire. Now, what the oblation is might depend on the deity, but generally it's ghee. Right? Generally, that's the kind of the standard thing. Of course, I mix my ghee with a lot of black sesame seeds given the deities that I worship. So there are going to be specific things to specific deities. Ideally, leaves also. We dip the leaves in ghee and then we put the leaves, bell leaves. So the best kind of homa, you'll see even in the Padati, the one that I have floating around right now, there's a whole section called Patra Shodhana, which I think most of you are going to have to skip because we're not using bell leaves. Unless you are. Unless, I remember like a long time ago, I would have Bhairavananda, both of us would sit and just like pluck rose leaves. For like an hour, just plucking rose leaves, and then that we would dip in ghee and then put into the homa fire. And it was like, okay, that's just taking too much time. So now we just like straight offer ghee and black sesame seeds. Because the black tilam, the kala tilam, it's a substitute. Energetically, the black sesame seed is a substitute for vilva leaves. That's one correspondence that we learn about. I don't actually know where that's from. It's just a folk thing. It's like an oral thing that I heard. I've never seen a reference in any text for it. So anyway, but having said this, the offerings are going to be different, but generally the basic structure of the homa is here's a fire, you invoke the presence of the divine into the fire, and into the living murti of the fire, you're making your oblations of ghee or some other substance. Maybe even red hibiscus flowers dipped in semen. I kid you not, in the Karpuradi Stotram, that's what we're told to offer, right? So it's different for different deities. Some are very transgressive, very left-leaning offerings, others are very Saumya, gentle offerings. It doesn't matter. Basically, the fire has something to do with sound. As we're learning now in modern science, it's like there's a link between fire and sound. I think in NASA, right, they have this combustion engine where they light a fire and they make a sound, and the two are mutually enforcing one another. So the fire gets hotter, it's stoked by the sound, and the sound gets louder or something. I don't know, I forget exactly what happens, but there is a link between fire and sound. So doing homa with the mantra, you do 10,000 of these, right? So 100,000 repetitions by japa, then 10,000 into the fire. And then again, 10% rule. 10% of 10,000 is going to be 1,000. 1,000 times you do tarpana. So the next mantra, instead of saying swaha, you might say at the end, tarpayami namaha. Or you might just say tarpayami. Or you might say Shri Padukam Pujayami Tarpayami Namaha. Or the whole thing might be Shri Padukam Pujayami Tarpayami Namaha Swaha. That like just covers your whole base. So if you have like say Panchakshari, if you're like Namah Shivaya, Shri Padukam Pujayami Tarpayami Namaha Swaha, that whole thing will cover all the parts of the Puraścaraṇa, more or less. But specifically the Tarpanam, it could just be Tarpayami Swaha. Tarpayami Swaha. So in the Padati, there's a section called Tarpanam, and there's a specific mantra which you can use for the Tarpanam. And we'll talk about that in a bit. We'll show you the Padati and we'll look at that mantra. Yeah, exactly. So again, one way they did this traditionally is to do a homa every single day. So in the daytime, they would chant their mantras. Say in a day, you could realistically do 100 malas maybe if you lived in an ashram in a more classical setting. Now that might be difficult, challenging with work and spouse and house and mouse and all that. But if you're in like this like retreat and you have the whole day, you might be, I think, even if your mantra is long, I think it's possible that you can get to 100 malas a day. Say it takes 4 or 5 hours. And of course, it gets faster as you continue. But say it takes 4 or 5 or 6 hours to do 100 malas. You know, you're doing puja also and your other chores, maybe chopping wood, firewood, whatever. But then at night, you light a fire. And then every night you do homa. And so if every day you do 100 malas, then every night you're doing 10 malas into the fire. So that way you don't have to do all the homa mantras like once a month or once every 3 months or something. So if you've done 100,000 repetitions, then you sit down for homa. It's going to be a long homa. You better have lots of wood. And so it might be nice to break up the homas a little bit. So traditionally, I think people would do a homa every single day. It's wonderful if you have that opportunity. If you have in your house a place where you can light a fire every single day, you can keep up with your japa and homa will go alongside it, and maybe tarpana also. Literally, you can do all the 5 things together in one day. Typically, the 5th thing you do at the end. We'll come to that. For now, just the homa is 10% of the japa, and I'm gonna hopefully provide a homa padati so you can light the fire, invoke ma into the fire, and do this kind of homa. But very simply, it just involves fire and involves purifying the mantra through fire. And Lakana is asking, can you use a public fire pit? I say yes because I'm a Kali Bhakta. So for me, there's no sense of pure or impure, which is very, very problematic and very, very challenging for most of the Hindu world, arguably for most of the world. So most of the acharyas in almost every tradition will say, no, don't use a public homa kunda. Who knows what kind of energies are there? Do you know, like it's unclean to use just a random fire. And don't light a cigarette in that fire. Don't put trash into that fire. Like, and once a sadhu said to me, you know, I had this habit, I still have this habit of getting to the end of my homa and then wanting to burn like everything that's around me, which is usually the packaging of the wood, the combustible stuff. Like whatever's combustible, like cardboard stuff, like I want to burn it. But sometimes the cardboard is dyed. You know, like say you buy some wood or something and there's like a cardboard packaging and it's like red or some color. That's a dye. It's probably toxic. Probably the fumes will kill me. But I just get excited and I throw everything. And a sadhu said to me, you know who does this? Asuras. They're the ones that throw trash into the Vedic yagyas. And he said, you are no better than an asura. You've made a trash fire out of Ma Kali's fire. One sadhu scolded me like that. I was younger then, and I was really like chastised. I was like so embarrassed. I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Now I would have owned that a bit more. I would have been like, and so what? What is there in this entire universe that mother is not going to devour? You think Ma Kali is a vegetarian? Wait till she comes for your body and mine. You think Ma Kali won't eat trash? It's not trash to her. It's her own self. She's devouring her own self. She knows no difference between trash and rash and cash and throw cash and trash. It's the same to her. So cash, you know, the ones, throw it into the fire. I almost did that one time. I had this like $100 bill and for other reasons. And then I was about to throw it into the fire. And then I was like, no, but I don't want to burn Ma Lakshmi. So I didn't do it. And also I wanted to buy some other things. So I didn't. Anyway, but trash, rash, cash, Ma eats it all, you know. And so like the Kali kind of understanding is like, swaha, motherfuckers. You know, what the fuck? Like... And again, don't take my word for it. Somananda makes this argument. Somananda, he asks, is the fire in the Brahmana's house any different than the fire in the smashan? By fire, he means consciousness, and by the house, he means the body. That's the kind of wordplay here. So in the Brahmana, there's consciousness. Or rather, consciousness within consciousness is the experience of a Brahmana. Then, just playing with this language a bit, in the Chandala who lives in the smashan, is there not the same consciousness? Aren't they both conscious? The contents of their mind might be different. One is thinking about Vedic hymns, the other is thinking about funeral pyres. One is living in one part of town, the other is living in another part of town. Bodily wise, mental wise, they're different. But consciousness wise, they're the same. The consciousness in the Brahmana and the consciousness in the Chandala is one and the same consciousness. It's Eka Rasa. If that's the case, then is the fire in the Brahmana's house ritually pure, such that the fire in the smashan is ritually impure? How can that be when they're both just fire? That won't they cook and burn the same? So our claim from Somananda's point of view, from Shiva Drishti, just that's the Shadagama, is like whatever. Like it's all the same. And that's why nowadays I don't mind my mala touching the floor or my feet. Like it's like a different bhava. Whereas for years, it was important to me to like chant on my right hand. Every time my mala would touch my feet or the ground, I would touch it to my forehead. All of that served me up to a point. And then I grew and I changed and my sadhana changed and my understanding changed and like the way I present it has changed, unfortunately, for some. So this is very important thing that like it's going to be different at different stages of our sadhana. It's going to be different from the point of view of different traditions. So to be responsible, to be dharmic, I have to say, no, make sure your fire is ritually pure. In other words, start your own fire. Yeah, swaha motherfuckers. Start your own fire and then like do the proper mantras and then don't let anybody desecrate that fire. So don't let anybody light cigarettes in it, throw trash in it. Don't let anybody point their feet towards it. That's also something that we argue can anger the deity in the fire. Not that deities get angry, but this kind of language is used in this world when it comes to like fire ceremony. So the fire is a living being. We don't want to point our feet at it. We don't want to disrespect it. And whatever you give the fire, generally think, is this something that I would like to eat or that I would give some loved ones? Because if this is something that's good and tasty, that's the one you should give to the fire. You know, they say like, okay, like ghee is so tasty and it's so nourishing, and it takes a hell of a long time to make. I have to like let the milk settle into curd, and then I have to churn the curd. I've never myself done this, but from what I hear, it's a process. And then you take that ghee and you put it into the fire. Like, what the fuck? That's ghee I could have eaten, and instead I'm putting it into a fire. That's sacrifice. The word yajur means sacrifice. Yajur Veda is about yagya. The word yagya means to sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice would it be if it's just trash? If you're going to throw that trash away anyway, is it really a sacrifice to put it into the fire? Unless what you're sacrificing is your idea of pure and impure. You see, it's all about where you are in your sadhana. In the beginning, if it's just a convenient way to get rid of your trash, then the spiritual value of that is diminished. But like at some point in your sadhana, if it's a convenient way to be inconvenienced in terms of your dogmatic outlook, then it's a good thing to do. Challenge your dogma a bit and say, oh, this is not going to go into the fire? Watch. Let me try. Let's see what will happen. You know what's funny? At the end of the day, I'm still a Kshatriya. Like, you can't unlearn that. And I think what that means is that I'm always going to be experimenting. I'm always going to be trying new things. And like with sadhana, to be reckless in experimentation is to see what you can get away with almost. And to be like kind of honest about it. Like, I ate this food that I'm supposed to not eat. Did that genuinely harm my spirituality? Or I put something into the fire that the text told me not to put into the fire. Did that genuinely harm my spirituality? These kinds of experiments are something that, the kinds of things that Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda really inspired us to do. Don't believe what a book says only, right? It's valuable. We should look at the book, and that's something to go off of. But how long will we live based on words on a page? It might have been true for somebody, but that doesn't mean it has to be true for me. And it might have been true at some time, but that doesn't mean it's true right now. How will I know whether it's true or not? I'll try it. And you know what? Maybe I'll die. So what? I'd rather die experimenting with truth than like live the rest of my life believing what people who came before me said, just because they said it. The only authority is my own life and my own experience. And everything that came before is there to embolden that authority, not to take it from me. So given that, I would say to that Lakana, you're asking the wrong person. Like, you know, when you're, again, I have to be very clear about this. If you're asking for rules, definitely don't ask me. Because I will say yes, 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 and try. Just do it. Just try it and see. And how does it go? But many people say, no, don't use a public fire. Okay, so Homa. 10,000 things into the Homa. Yeah, exactly. Fuck it. That's not for you. You're a Gana. And that person who said, oh, like you're an Asura for putting the trash into the fire. I'm like, yes, you know what? Maybe I am. But Satan from Milton's Paradise Lost is the only person I ever had any respect for anyway. So that's why I love Appetite for Destruction. It's really a good outlaw record. It's good for me in this time. Anyway, coming back to the Homa, we have 10,000 repetitions, which is 10% of 100,000. Then there's 10% of that, which is 1,000 water oblations. So this could be water, this could be wine, it could be Ganga Jal, like some texts specify it has to be from a certain place, a tirtha, a holy pilgrimage place, or it could be any water. My grandfather, in this sense, was a true Aghori because he said when he dies, I should cremate him. He specifically told me, he said, cremate me and then throw my ashes in the drain, in the ditch. Now I get it. He had this kind of mad gleam in his eye as he said it. And we used to think that he was just kind of being like humble or whatever, like just like, oh, like don't fuss about me. He was all very much like, don't fuss about me kind of guy, you know. And so we thought it was just him saying, don't fuss about me. So then I took his ashes all the way up to Manikarnika Ghat in Varanasi. I fought off all the Brahmanas and pseudo-Brahmanas trying to do the Shraddha for me. I fought them all off one by one. I went and did my own Shraddha and silenced those motherfuckers. And then they left me alone. I did my Shraddha. And then after I finished the Shraddha, I came home, my grandmother kicked her body. It was wonderful. The whole thing was wonderful. But I did his Shraddha in the Ganga, in Manikarnika, because that's what you do as a Shaiva. But his point was really interesting. It was like, why do that? Why go to Manikarnika? Why go to the Ganga? He revered those places. But is it not the same water that flows in the ditch? Now I finally understand his non-dual vision. Nobody then, when he kicked his body, did. They thought it was just like trying to not be a fuss, you know. But now I get it. I'm like, oh, I should have done what he told me to do. I didn't, you know. He told me to like throw his ashes into a ditch, but I didn't. So, whoops. That was his request. I just didn't follow. I just went to Manikarnika. So tough luck to him, I guess. I really don't do what I'm told. My guru himself told me to go and put his ashes in the ditch, and I went instead to the ditch that's called the Ganga. So, anyway. Coming back to Homa, this is important that the Tarpana after the homa, which is fire, the tarpana is water. The tarpana, the kind of water or the wine or whatever it is that you use, it flows. And the mantra for it also is kind of flowing. Instead of swaha, it's tarpayami, tarpayami, tarpanam. How beautiful, tarpanam. The mantra is specific to tarpanam. So you could say, the mantra, say Namah Shivaya, tarpayami namaha, or tarpayami swaha, or Shri Padukam tarpayami namaha, something like that. There's various versions, and I'll show you the one that's in the Padati in just a little bit. Doesn't it? It's flowing. So tarpanam. Then there's this thing called marjanam. Marjanam means to sprinkle. Typically, you sprinkle upwards. Let me show you. I have this wand, this kusha wand, which is interesting. The wand chooses the wizard Harry. Anyway, this wand, you just sprinkle it up like that. Sprinkle it into the air. But also you can use a flower. So you dip the flower in some water or some wine and you sprinkle it up. It's funny because when I do Bhairava stuff, everything starts to smell like whiskey. And like I'm like doused in whiskey. I'm like, damn, I think I'm like Hosier now or some shit. You know, like I'm like, I smell like Father John Misty or Hosier or some shit at this point. But anyways, like flicking the whiskey up into the air, you know, like, or water or something, some sprinkling is done. And so that's tarpayami, then marjayami. So there's a mantra for it, marjayami namaha, or you can just say the mantra and then sprinkle it up. I usually say marjayami. So I say tarpayami namaha, marjayami namaha. Anyway, I'll show you the Padati mantra in just a bit. So the marjanam, and then having done that, now it's time to feed people. So this is the final thing. It's true of almost every Vedic yagya. I remember even at my wedding, like at the end of the wedding, like there's this Brahmana who, by the way, did all of my samskars when I was a child. So he was doing my wedding too. It was very sweet. But that Brahmana, like my father is going to pay him money, right? Like money. But you can't get past the ritual of handing him the rice and plantain. So the part of the yagya is my father, who is the one who's hosting the yagya, the wedding. He comes up and hands this Brahmana and his wife this plate of like a leaf plate, and within it some uncooked rice and a banana or something, and like a silver coin. Like that's the Brahmana Dakshina. So that's true of all Vedic rituals. Again, notice Tantra is not that different from the Vedas. And when you finish a ritual, you feed some Brahmana. So even after I did my grandfather's funeral, right as I finished it, there was one sadhu sitting up there. And he was just kind of sitting there. I was doing my rituals. Then he called down to me after he knew when I finished, and he called. He said, "Hey Bhairava," he said, "now do your Brahmana Dakshina. Brahmana Dakshina karo, like do your now to." And then he held his hand out because he's a sadhu, and I just finished a ritual, and so should I give him something to eat? So, and by the way, I went up there. I gave him some rupees. He gave me mantra diksha, no? People who have a problem with the casual nature of mantra diksha have just never been to India, because every sadhu is giving you mantra diksha every single moment. It's not that big of a deal, because every priest will give you a mantra. Even when they're tying a red thread, they might give you a shani mantra or something like that. It's a mantra. We live in mantra. We're like a fish swimming in the ocean of mantra. Only when we come to this arid desert called the West, the water trickles so little that we create all sorts of superstitions and edifices around this trickling water, which back home is torrentially flowing in the monsoon season. That's all year round. Okay, anyway, coming back to this mantra business, you have to feed people for it to be a complete puja. There must be some kind of charity or some act of service. And you can see how that idea can be carried into the Bhagavad Gita karma yoga theory. It can be carried into Swami Vivekananda's practical Vedanta. But now in the Vedas, it's not that yet. The karma yoga is the ritual, which includes as one of its many limbs this feeding of the holy. So by Brahmana is meant holy person, and in the Kularnava Tantra they use that word. In chapter 15, right? They use the, as Jayarata will probably confirm for me, they use the word Brahmana. So when you finish it, you're supposed to feed 10 holy people. And that's, I think, open for interpretation. Is a Brahmana someone who was born in a Brahmin family? Maybe not, because maybe a Brahmana is someone who took the Upanaya. Not all people who are born in a Brahmin's family get Upanaya ceremony. Maybe it's only those people who have an Upavitra. Or is it those people who demonstrate holy dispositions, like holy qualities? Is it a knowledgeable person? Who is a Brahmana, right? Is it the cat? Like, is it the houseless? Because arguably the unhoused is a representative of Shiva. So in America, who is a sadhu but the unhoused person? So who should we feed? But I remember the first Shivaratri we did together back in 2020 or 2021. But way back then, we did a Shivaratri together. By the way, this year I'd like to extend an invitation. This is tentative. We're still sorting it out. But it'd be nice if you wanted. You're all welcome to come to the new place in Oxnard maybe, and we can celebrate in a big way. We can do Shivaratri in person together all night. But back then, we're just on Zoom. I mean, right now even we're still on Zoom. But we're just on Zoom all night, and we're so wonderful, right? Lavji, I'm going to need you. I'm going to need some big strong Kadaganatha to have some goats. And I'm not going to be able to get it in one stroke, so I could use some help there. Yeah, I know you do. I know you got me. That sword, which generationally has tasted Ma Kali's Prasad's blood, may it taste that blood once more. Let not the puritanism of our age dilute the wild, reckless beauty of Kali Puja. But now, coming to this point, this Shivaratri, way back when, 2 or 3 years ago, it was interesting because at the end of it, I mean, remember, like, the whole thing was about raising money for the unhoused, but like what we didn't really talk about was that was the yagya. So at the end of it, I think people had donated. So one of the few times that we like put out a donation thing, twice we did it. Once we did it for the Shivaratri, another time for India during COVID. So like I think India was hit at that time really hard with COVID, and we did a special charity thing, 5-6 hours or something. We did some kind of lecture. I think it's in fact in the podcast in Spotify, there's the trailer. It's a 6-hour or 7-hour long lecture. And that was for that. It was to raise funds for India's COVID relief. And so I was like, I'm just going to lecture for 7 hours straight. And then whatever you feel like donating, donate. And we'll go to India. It was really great because, anyway, we don't get into that. But the yagya, the first yagya we did for Shiva, that Shivaratri, it was for the unhoused specifically. So we only raised like $500 or something like that. But what we did is we took that money out in like 20s and then just went around and like gave it to the sadhus of LA. And a lot of these people are just like people who are unhoused because of mental illness and like because of lack of family structures and support. They're not necessarily there like in India because they want to do sadhana. But of course, what else will represent Shiva but the person who lives wild and free for one reason or another? So again, is that a brahmana? I certainly thought so when we did that yagya way back when. To worship Shiva is to worship sadhus. Who is a sadhu but one for whom the sky is thy roof, the grass is thy bed, food what chance may bring, well cooked or ill, judge not. Like that is the brahmana in the context of that puja. So we could say if you're worshipping baby Krishna, maybe it's children. You feed kids who like remind you of Krishna. Your kids maybe, or I sometimes like to like just buy samosas for the middle schools where I teach. And it's like, that's my yagya. I feed the middle schoolers. Or it could be your sangha members, people who like you feel have holy disposition because they're like in a spiritual community with you. You can feed them. I know Bhairav Anand, once he finished a Puraścaraṇa, and his version of this was to like do a musical recital at this particular temple. So he fed everyone and played music for everyone. So it's not just feeding them, he's also performing for them. But it's serving them. It's serving God in the form of all the people who visited this temple. It doesn't matter whether they're children or women or men or brahmanas or gender non-binary. It doesn't matter. Whoever's at the temple, they're holy because they're at the temple. And it's the temple of the deity for whom he just finished a Puraścaraṇa. So maybe you just feed all the people at that temple. You see, again, I think this section is open for interpretation. The word brahmana can mean so many different things. But putting this all together then, what do we got? Now we have the whole ritual, and we can close here, we can wrap up. We have 5 things. We have the japa portion, we have the homa portion, the tarpana, which again I'll remind you is libations, and then we have the marjana, which is sprinkling upwards 100 times, right? And then 10 people. Ideally, the 10% rule applies here, so we feed 10 people, at least. So if I did 100,000 repetitions by japa, I must have also done 10,000 by homa. I must have done 1,000 by tarpana, 100 by marjana, and 10 people must have been fed. All of this together equals 1 Puraścaraṇa, yes? And it's the whole thing is about the mantra. Even the feeding of the people, like the people that I feed might actually be the kinds of people that remind me of the mantra. So even if I'm not using the mantra, and I should, as I give them food, maybe in my mind I say the mantra, whatever the case may be, it's still the mantra. Because say I do a Kali puja, then I feed 10 women or something. Those 10 women are representatives of Kali. So I feel like I'm feeding Kali. You see, that's still the mantra. But notice these are 5 elements. Japa is for Vayu, for wind. Some people say Akasha. Again, you can play with these elements. Doesn't matter. There's Bhairav Akash there. So wind, we have wind. Then homa obviously is fire. Tarpana is obviously water. Marjana, because we're sprinkling up into the space, we call this Akasha. You know what marjana I think really is? It's offering celestial, not celestial, but astral beings, the mantra. Every time you sprinkle, it's like pouring one out for the boys, right? But not just the earth spirits, also the Bhuvar Loka spirits. And then finally you feed humans in the Bhuloka, that's earth. So put all this together. Japa, which is chanting, it's breath. It's not just breath, but voice. And, again, you do this inwardly. You don't need to say the mantra aloud unless you want to. Often it's a secret mantra, so you don't say it aloud anyway. But even as you chant it inwardly, the movement of the mantra doesn't have to sync to your breath, but it's a kind of prana. And prana is vayu, wind. So japa is vayu, wind. Homa is fire, agni or tejas. Tarpana is water. Tarpana meaning libations. Even if it's wine, it's still water. Marjana is akasha, space. And finally, bhojana, feeding people, is earth. So this is bhuta shuddhi. Isn't that so beautiful? Like what you do in the puja as bhuta shuddhi, you are now doing in this ritualized way using a mantra. Now with that one mantra, you take it through space and wind and fire and water and earth. That one mantra is being drawn through all these different elements. In a way, you're initiating the elementals. You're awakening the 5 basic pure elements of the world and having that mantra throb and pulse like a spanda within those elements. How beautiful. That's puja, isn't it? Yeah, you're materializing divinity and you're divinizing material. To make the mundane divine and the divine mundane is what Tantra is about. To blur the lines between sacred and secular is what Tantra is about. How exciting is this, you guys? And look, the logic of it is so clean. 5 elements, here's my mantra. To awaken the mantra, purify it through the 5 elements. Or rather, mantra is pure, take the mantra, apply it to the 5 elements, see that the world is God. Beautiful. It's elegant, it's simple, it's beautiful. But the question now comes, right? Where does puja fit into all of this? I think that's what Sonuma is asking. What about puja? It seems like in the in the Kularnava Tantra, it seems like we're talking about Traikala puja as being another limb of this Puraścaraṇa. So the 5 things I already mentioned, that's happening, right? But also, you're doing the puja. Like, as per the padati I'm going to show you, and as per the padati we're going to make. So the puja is like offering flowers, incense, fire, doing a bunch of mantras. There's tarpana in the puja. Homa is often a part of the puja too. So marjana, tarpana, homa, bhojana, these are all parts of the puja. And japa is also part of a puja. So you can consider puja as being an overarching category that subsumes these 5. So this is called the Panchanga Puraścaraṇa. The 5-limbed Puraścaraṇa is all of it expressed within puja. But also, it doesn't need to be. So you might be doing puja or you might not. The Kularnava Tantra says you should do puja thrice, which is crazy. It's like morning, noon, and dusk. So dawn, noon, dusk, or dusk, midnight, dawn, or whatever. But 3 times you perform puja and you do all the stuff we just talked about. Now that makes sense if you have nothing else to do, which is, I think, exciting, right? Like if you are retired, or for whatever reason you don't go to work, or for whatever reason you're single, you don't have a spouse to take care of, or children to raise, or animals to, like, you'll never be bored. Because look at all these things that you can do. And to do them all is quite rewarding. Just imagine a life like this, right? Every day, you just do puja, thrice a day. And then besides puja, you do your mantra. You close your eyes and you visualize the form, and you chant mantras. And then while you're doing japa, you keep it fresh because you're also doing homa. And then you have to cut wood and collect leaves. And so there's an active kind of an organ. So beautiful in Ashland. It was so traditional. Like those who had just come to the fire, they took it upon themselves. They were never asked, but they took it upon themselves to go and collect firewood in the wild. In the smashan, they were looking for sticks and wood to keep the dhuni going, which is exactly what they used to do back then. God is real. Isn't that so beautiful? Just the activity of going out, collecting wood, coming back, lighting a fire, that keeps it all interesting. It's so beautiful to be at a fire. And then you do your mantra with your sangha, homa, and then tarpana, and then marjana, and then there's partying, there's bhojana, you eat food with people. Like all of that is a holy life. Puja, tarpana, marjana, bhojana, and of course japa. Above all japa. Just that mantra and you and the deity, and the mantra is the deity. So just you and the relationship that you have to God as expressed by the mantra. That's the tradition. That's Tantra in a nutshell. And it could be mantra. It could be one that your guru gave you, one that you saw in a book, one that you like. Really anything. Because all mantras mean the same thing. God. So we don't have to fuss about that. Though we do say that through many Puraścaraṇas the mantra awakens. But if you have an awakened mantra, how easy would that Puraścaraṇa be? Remember Rajivji? It was so beautiful. Rajeshwara, he took the Matangi mantra, went to bed in the shrine, and then he woke up and he was like, oh my God, it's chanting itself. And I was like, yeah, because we did so many Puraścaraṇas with that, so it's going to hit different than, say, a different mantra which we didn't do Puraścaraṇas for. Because it's awakened already. So then that's going to make it easier for him now to start his Matangi Puraścaraṇa. So again, these are all considerations, but they're not limitations. You can start right now itself, whether or not you have a mantra. It's a very important thing. Just get started. But let me give you one more point here. There's another thing. Each mantra will have a certain number of syllables, yes? And the mantra is often named by the number of syllables that it has. So the Shodashi mantra is not just because it's referring to Shodashi, but it's referring to the number of syllables there is in the mantra, which again is the same thing. Shodashi is Shodashi because there are 16 syllables in a mantra. And the mantra naturally is going to be 16 syllables long, which is Panchadashi, wonderful Virupakshi Manjama. And Panchadashi is going to be 15 syllables long, and Panchakshari will be 5 syllables long. There's a 36 syllable mantra, 22 syllable mantra, 23 syllable mantra. Navarna mantra means so many things. 9 syllable mantra. There's one for the Chandi, which we mentioned earlier. It's called Navarna. It's a Kali Navarna mantra also. There are all these different mantras, but the name of the mantra is just the number of syllables there are in the mantra, right? So this is the next thing to know about Puraścaraṇa. The number of Puraścaraṇas, and by one Puraścaraṇa I mean Japa 100,000, Homa 10,000, Tarpana 1,000, Marjana 100, Bhojana 10. That's all one Puraścaraṇa, yeah? The number of Puraścaraṇas that it takes to quote-unquote awaken a mantra or attain mantra siddhi, meaning to like make some progress. I'm not going to say what that looks like. For some people that looks like an occult power. Like, I don't know, they have specific occult power they want to get, and so they do a particular Puraścaraṇa for that. That's fine. That's also perfectly valid. For others, it's Ishvara Darshana. They want to see the deity to whom the mantra is ascribed, or like begin an actual relationship with that deity. So they want God vision, a vision of God. Others want non-dual realization. It's all different as per the mantra, as per the practitioner. But mantra siddhi just means you get what you want. What do you want? Maybe you don't even know. Who cares? In the beginning, if you don't know why you're doing Puraścaraṇa, I don't think that's a problem at all. People were asking me about sankalpas. I couldn't care less. Because all I know is that I want to do it. Why I want to do it or why it's worth doing, I might not be able to know. And maybe don't even need to know. Who cares if God exists or not? I want her. And who cares why I want her? Or whether it would be valuable or not to have her. The fact is I want her. That's enough. So you can just start, right, without any understanding of what mantra siddhi looks like. But you should know that mantra siddhi is promised. And again, we have many problems with this. Abhinavagupta has a whole text explaining why it can't be this way. But it's said, anyway, in the tantric world, that if you do the Puraścaraṇa as many times as there are syllables in the mantra, then you'll get mantra siddhi. So for a longer mantra, more repetition is required. So for Panchadashi, it's something like 1.5 million times japa. Yes, it's very important that we acknowledge that the mantra itself will determine how much work is required to awaken it. So Panchakshari is great. I actually recommend everyone start with either 1 syllable or 5 syllables and get the hang of Puraścaraṇa first. How many Puraścaraṇas I've done with Panchakshari, and it's helped me so much because it's given me the flow of Puraścaraṇa, and then I can use bigger mantras and it's easy. But if you're starting a big mantra and starting Puraścaraṇa right away, that's where I think I can be better, is that I've often advised you to do Puraścaraṇa, but the mantra that you're doing Puraścaraṇa for is pretty big, which doesn't acknowledge that maybe we could use a bit of practice first. And so I have to acknowledge that maybe there I wasn't too skillful. But I remember when I was a kid, how many Puraścaraṇas I did with Panchakshari. And with even Ekakshari. Right? And again, yeah, sometimes fuck it, we bawl. Sometimes you just, but again, you take your time. Be patient. There's no need to do it all in one Navaratri or one lifetime even. Because why rush it? As Swami Ashokananda points out beautifully, aren't you going to be doing then what you're doing now? Even if you realize God, what will really change? I mean, won't you just continue loving on God like you're doing now? Like, what will really change about your life then, after you realize God? Really, comparatively, not much. So why rush? Just relax and enjoy what you're doing now, which is loving on God, which is what you'll always be doing in every way, shape, or form, loving on God. So relax, take your time. That being said, there's a goal still. Like, even if you take your time, there's still, like, you're setting your sights on something, which is this. How many syllables are there in my mantra? Okay, I've discovered it's 5, or I've discovered it's 16, or 8, or 9, or whatever. Now, I'll aim to do that many Puraścaraṇas of the mantra. So that means 100,000 times, say 9. So 900,000 times japa, so that you can finish the japa section of your Navarna mantra. Then 90,000 times homa, to finish the japa, the homa section. Then 9,000 times tarpana, 900 times marjana, and then 90 times bhojana. Like right now, I didn't get a chance to do all my homa and tarpana and marjana for like the Navaratri. But before that, I was also working on a Puraścaraṇa, which I didn't do the homa for. So now I have like something like 200,000. So what, instead of doing like 10,000 homa, now I have to aim for 20,000. It's kind of like I mushed to Puraścaraṇa japa sections together. So I'm just going to mush the homas together. And so like now, it's like I'm doing a Puraścaraṇa for 200,000. But actually, I know in my own mental calculation that it's actually two different Puraścaraṇas. 100,000 and 100,000. It's just that I'm now scheming around how to meet the homa, tarpana, marjana, and bhojana requirements. So again, it's like you just have a goal, and then you just play with how you're going to meet that goal. And it depends on when you get access to a homa fire, what time allows, and what your inclination is at what time. Again, it's no pressure, it's no rush. You can do it your way. That's what we learned. Okay, having said all of this, if your goal is to get to 9, take as much time as you want, finish 900,000, 90,000, 9,000. Yeah, how badly do you want to violate your lease? Right? Some of you can't light fires in your house, be careful. So get to the end of all of this after doing 9 Puraścaraṇas, and the claim is that for a Navarna mantra, after 9 Puraścaraṇas, something should happen. What the fuck that looks like, I don't know. And by the way, Abhinavagupta carefully points out that if we could know, then God is no longer free. If I could, by some action, make God do something, then God is not free. For God to be free, she must be willing to not do what the text says she will do. So if the text says that she will reveal herself after 900,000 repetitions, maybe she won't. And maybe after 9 repetitions, she'll reveal herself. Who knows? Who cares? It's enough to just have this goal and do it for its own sake, because it's innately rewarding. As one sadhu said to me, I asked him, I said, there are all these rules in the Puraścaraṇa world. And if you look at the end of Swami Shivananda Saraswati's book, Japa Yoga, which I do recommend everybody get. It's a beautiful book. But at the end of that book, there's an appendix. And that appendix is about Puraścaraṇa. And there's a bunch of rules. And if you read those, you'll balk and you'll be scared. Because it's so strict. It's you have to sit in the same asana, in the same spot, facing the same direction, or the mantras don't count. You have to sit. Any mantras you do standing up, don't count. You have to sit to do the mantras. They must be focused. You must be eating only roots and fruits and milk, and ideally fasting. You should be sleeping on the floor. Strict celibacy. Get a brahmana who knows the Vedic mantras to perform the homa on your behalf so you don't bungle it up. It's so interesting, right? The idea is that you have to do a homa, but you probably don't know how to do the homa because you're not versed and trained in a family that does homa. So go hire somebody. You'll still get the merit of the homa because it's your homa, but somebody who knows how to do it should do it. It's so interesting. Swami Shivananda is basically using Śaiva Tantra rules about Puraścaraṇa and making sure that we follow it to the T, which is good for sadhus because in one sense, what else are you going to do? Oh, and it says you can't speak any other language but your mother tongue in Sanskrit. So my mother tongue is Tamil, and what am I going to do? Just not give lectures in English? It's interesting, right? My Tamil's not good enough, I think, to give lectures in Tamil. Naan kolikari sapada maten. What the fuck? What am I going to say? I give Tamil lectures, but then what? While I'm doing Puraścaraṇa, I can't lecture? I mean, yes, some people would say, yes, if you're doing Puraścaraṇa, why are you lecturing? This is Rajasic, you're working, you should be in retreat, withdrawn, contemplating God. You should be sleeping on the floor and observing a strict diet. There's all these rules to making sure the Puraścaraṇa goes a certain way. In the Karpuradi Stotram, it invites us to chant 100,000 repetitions of the 22 syllable by day and another 100,000 by night. So then where is sleep? And it's all this very difficult and scary thing. So if you read the Swami Shivananda instructions for Puraścaraṇa, you'll be like, oh fuck. So I asked this sadhu, I said it must be frustrating for somebody to maybe, I don't know, do 22 Puraścaraṇas only to not get the result that they wanted. And then of course, they're going to look back and think, did I do something wrong? In other words, did I mess up a single homa? Because one homa, might ruin the whole thing. If you just didn't do one homa right, said the mantra wrongly. Did you maybe, I don't know, look a different direction one time? What is it? When you hear about all these rules, then you realize that if you don't get the result that you wanted, you can always look back and beat yourself up over which rule you didn't follow. And if you were to follow every single one of the rules, it would now become, for most people, impractical to do the Puraścaraṇa. Yeah, it makes us think of the Ebramelin. It's very much like the Ebramelin, right? Because the Ebramelin, it's you have to be celibate, you have to be by yourself. Aleister Crowley, I think, bought a house just so he could go there and do it privately. But then he broke the rules, right? He had his mistress come and visit him or whatever. He got lonely or something. And I think Jimmy Page bought that house. Right? I think, was it that house? I don't know. But anyway, there's this Western ceremonial magic rite called the Abramelin. And it's about demons. It's about a lot of things. But at the end of that ceremony, you worship, not worship, but you invoke the Goetic demons and then work with them. And just Solomon building his temple, you get their power. It's a wonderful thing. And you can see the stories of people doing Puraścaraṇa. It's like they get all sorts of, like, the ocean of the Bhava Sagara, the stormy kind of ocean of the mind is churned up, and all this nonsense like comes out of the subconscious mind. And like when you read The Way of the Pilgrim, you see it can be terrifying. It's like all these suppressed urges and desires and voices, and sadhana can be a really dramatic process. And maybe by yourself, sitting alone in the room, doing japa all the time, it might be too much for most of us. It might bring up things that we're not ready to handle. We might need support from our community. We need support from our spouse and our house and our mouse. I don't know. It might not be practical for most of us to right away go into retreat. So like the Abramelin, very much like that, the Puraścaraṇa, if you follow it to the T, which I argue is actually impossible because there are all these contradictory rules in different texts. So it's actually, I think, impossible to follow the Puraścaraṇa to the T, because what's the right one? There's so many different books, which leads to a kind of ambiguity, a kind of relativism, a kind of invitation to make it your own. So our guru always told us, just do it the best that you can, and who cares about the outcome? Because you don't know what, I mean, it's like, the reason I asked the sadhu this is because I was assuming that a person who did Puraścaraṇa might have a clear idea as to what they want. Say they want to see the deity, right? It's problematic then to expect that outcome when there's so many variables. That's what I was trying to point out. I was trying to say that, like, even if you try your best, you're probably going to get something wrong. So then I was basically making a case for grace. I'm like, the only way you could possibly succeed at this is if there was grace for it. And again, all the rituals I did so far in the Vamachara world have not been because I sought them out. That I will say emphatically. They just somehow occurred to me. Like somehow I just found myself in a setting in which there's a bali to be performed, and suddenly the knife is in my hand. Or I just found myself in the setting where there's a consort practice. Or I just found myself in the setting where I had a bone mala, or I was holding in my left hand, or something. It was just really wonderful how the skulls that I needed came at the time when they came. The bali, everything that I ever did in Kali sadhana, I realized the stuff that was most transgressive happened inadvertently. Like one time, we decided not to offer any panchamakaras in one of our puja. Somebody actually, comes in and brings raw goat, bleeding, fresh off the bone. Just randomly. She's never done this before, but she brought it for Ma's puja. And then I had no choice, I offered it. And like stuff like that, like it's almost as if there are procedures. And Ma doesn't need the procedure. She could just appear to you, just like that if she wanted. And yet, for whatever reason, she likes to go through the motions. As if there's something valuable, inherently valuable about that procedure, about that lila. Almost to say that if you could have her right now, it wouldn't be as meaningful as having her through the procedure. But to do that procedure requires nothing short of grace. So the right things have to appear at the right time. You just kind of have to stumble into doing it right. So therefore we say, you can try your best, but never be deluded into thinking that it's within our control. So the final note about Puraścaraṇa is, we've said quite a lot already. Number of Puraścaraṇas that you're required to do is based on the number of varnas or syllables in the mantra. You know that. The Puraścaraṇa itself is 5 things. The Panchanga Puraścaraṇa, as we learned in the Kularnava Tantra, is puja, is japa, is homa, is tarpana, is marjana, is bhojana. Let me break that down for you. Recitation of mantra with your mala, just raw recitation, probably visualizing the deity, probably visualizing the yantra. Secondly, it is homa, offering the mantra with swaha to a fire, feeling the deity is present in the fire. Thirdly, it's tarpana. I usually do this to my lingam or to my yantra, but it's pouring out libations. Sometimes you can do it right into the Ganga, or, I don't know, in a bowl, or call it tamara kunda, copper bowl, whatever, but pouring a cold one out for the boys, like that kind of thing. That's tarpana. Or for the girls in the case of Dakinis or whatever. Or in the case of Ardhanareshwara for the everything. And then you pour now libation. And then after that you do marjana. That's sprinkling up into the air. You should marjayami namaha, marjayami namaha. Finally bhojana, feed 10 people or 8 people or however many is per your 10% rule. Okay, so these 5 things are the Puraścaraṇa. You could be doing puja or not, or you could have all of this as part of your puja. Puja is just, the word just means worship, and the whole Puraścaraṇa sequence is itself a puja. In the Kularnava Tantra, Parvati asks, "Oh Lord Shiva, tell me about this Puraścaraṇa." And Lord Shiva says it is the best of all rituals. So it's a ritual. Yes? It's a ritual. It's a puja or a yagya. All these 5 things, a kind of bhuta shuddhi, a purification of the elements using just a mantra. I also mentioned that the mantra could be something you get from a guru. Remember, Lord Shiva alone is the guru. So even if a human is giving you the mantra, it's likely a mantra that Lord Shiva has already revealed in the tantras, or that has already revealed to I don't know, the guru's guru or something, who's Shiva. And then you could also use one from a book or one from the internet. People have a lot of warnings about this. I just don't give a fuck. Like, I'm just not concerned with the superstitions that we have on the internet. Like, what fear? I mean, life is so scary, you guys. Like, against the backdrop of government collapse and tyranny and fascism, against the backdrop of the entire universe crumbling, what fear could you possibly have? The nuclear winter is upon us. Fuck it. Plunge into sadhana. Oh, I can't use his mantra because it's on the internet. Someone's getting shot in the street because you're obstructing an abduction of some lawful citizen. Like, fuck it. You know? Like, do the mantra. For the sake of that person who's being carted off and thrown into a prison somewhere without their legal rights, do the motherfucking mantra. What the fuck? So, Ramakrishna never played it safe, I don't think. But he tried his best, as far as possible, to follow the tradition. So again, we come back to one of the central themes of the tantric tradition. It's a balance between tradition and spontaneity. To do what came before, to the best of our ability, with reverence and love, but to really honor it, to really respect it. We cannot be slaves to it. We must be willing to think about it, to apply it, to experiment with it, and figure out whether it works or not for ourselves. And the consequences could be great. You could lose your household, you could lose your life, you could lose your mind. But these things are forfeit anyway. I wonder why we're so addicted to playing it safe all the time. And there's some thrill to it. Isn't there a tremendous thrill in life when we play it this way, when we play the game this way? It's remarkable. It's remarkable. So we say to Mother, whatever we need to lose, let us give it up now. Whether it will be taken from us in one way, shape, or form, now itself, proactively, we say, I surrender it to you. Can we say that? Because often, if we mean it, she might collect. She might come and collect. We say, take my wife, take my life, take my strife. And what if she comes and takes all of those things? If I have no wife, life, or strife, upon what will I base this fiction of myself, this personality that I'm constructing? Like, what will happen to that mannequin if it doesn't have all these things to hold it up, these props? So we say, let's just quit before we're fired, exactly. So this kind of renunciation, this kind of recklessness is not actually recklessness. It's love. It's deep love. And the safety and the surety comes from Ma, trusting that she's there and that she's the one that is calling us to her and that she's the one who's making us go through all these Puraścaraṇas and whatnot. She's the one that brought the knowledge, and not only that, brought the Ichcha, the desire, and through that knowledge and desire comes the action, so that Ichcha, Kriya and Jnana, she alone supplied. So we just have to trust her and do our best. So I'll say one last thing here about the Puraścaraṇa. It is said in the Kularnava that you can substitute. Tantra is also a lot about substitutions. Remember when we first talked about Bali? We talked about substituting the animal for a plant. By the way, if you are a Hindu, that's no less problematic. The plant is a jiva too, just so you know. Right? Only Jains have a right to speak here when it comes to like Bali, because if you're going to kill a cucumber, I don't know why that's somehow more okay to you than like killing a chicken. Be careful. If you say, oh, it's worse to kill a black rooster, but it's okay to cut a cucumber, you've misunderstood the fundamental tenet of jivahood, which inheres even in vegetables. It's a remarkable kind of thing, right? Anyway, coming to the Bali, you can substitute. And not only that, you can substitute the items in the puja. Instead of offering the panchamakaras, you can substitute each one. Like instead of offering the semen and the menstrual blood, you can instead offer a white flower and a red flower. Instead of offering, say, drugs, you could offer rice. Instead of offering meat, you could offer ginger. Or instead of offering fish, you could offer salt. Like that, right? Coconut water instead of wine. Like there's so many, coconut milk, sorry, instead of wine. There's so many ways to do the practice and get the same results, but with substitution. So that's no different with the Puraścaraṇa. There's a world in which you don't do homa, tarpana, marjana, bhojana. You don't do any of that. Instead, this is what the Kularnava Tantra says, and this is really for us, this is so liberating and so important to hear. You can, instead of doing the homa, you can instead of that just do another 100,000 of your mantra. So say you were doing 100,000 japa, instead of doing 10,000 homa, just do another 100,000 japa. Instead of doing 1,000 tarpana, which is arguably quicker, just do another 100,000 of your mantra. Instead of doing 100 marjana, another 100,000 of your mantra. And instead of doing bhojana, because some of us, how are we going to feed others? We can't even feed ourselves. We barely have the funds to feed ourselves. You know, how can we feed 10 people even? That's like a lot to ask. And it's like a householder who is lavish and has a mansion who maybe can do all of these things, who has the space to do homa, who has the wine and the ability to buy all these liquids to do tarpana, who has the means to feed people. Like, that's not something that all of us have. Most of us are sadhus in the sense that we're just kids. We're just kids in college or some shit, trying to like eke out a living as we try to pursue God, like our forebears. Given all of that, don't worry about it. Just do japa. That's what Holy Mother always taught us. Like, at the end of the day, we just do japa. Yeah, right, Nilavji? I'm so grateful for you, Ji, because you're a generational Śākta. As I am a generational Śaiva, you're a generational Śākta. And Ji is saying here that, like, at home, what we eat is what we do bali. Right? Like, vegetarians do vegetarian bali, and non-vegetarians do goat bali. And it's interesting because a lot of people that have a problem with me doing bali are people who eat meat, which is really strange to me, right? Like, somehow it's okay when that meat is killed in an industrial setting, but it's not okay when it's like offered to God and intimately killed as part of a ritual process in which we knew the animal and worshipped the animal and loved the animal. In fact, my mother, one of her earlier memories is having this pet goat that she loved very much. Its name was Attakutti, in Tamil meaning little goat. Can you imagine? Goats make really good pets, really sweet pets. They're very like dog-like. They play with you. And my mom, she has this wonderful story. I mean, you can tell that she's still kind of shaken by it. And that's the lesson, as it were. One day, like Tantalus, she's having goat curry, and they're telling her, this is Attakutti. And she's like eating it. And she's like, oh my God, I was just playing with this guy yesterday. And I was talking to Shrija Ma, and she was describing how when she was young, and they kind of shielded her from this, of course, they didn't let her see it, but she would remember going on the bus on the way to the temple, there'd be a goat at the back of the bus, and then later they would be having goat curry. And she like kind of put two and two together, and she realized that like, oh, that goat was sacrificed. But it's just our culture, you know, it's just our culture. And you could argue that it's backward, you could say it's barbaric, that somehow it's wrong to kill animals. But if that's the case, then we should take vegetarianism very seriously. And even then, what are we going to do about the plant jivas? You know, it's complicated. But anyway, it's a hunter's religion. Shiva is a hunter, remember? It's a Kshatriya's religion. Like, it's very important to remember these cultural things also. Having said all of this, maybe you're not able to do the homa. And many of us aren't. And many of us shouldn't, right? We might get in trouble if we do the homa. So, like, don't worry about it. Holy Mother said, Japat Siddhi. These are her words exactly. Japat Siddhi. From japa comes perfection, meaning all you need is the mantra. And all you will ever need to do in your sadhana is just repeat that mantra lovingly. And maybe that's the end of the instruction. Maybe you don't even need to visualize anything. I kid you not, now we make a whole kind of japa dhyana process out of it. I think because that's the way we learned, and that's a wonderful way to use our time, and it engages more of our faculties. But it's possible, you guys, that that's not even necessary. It's entirely possible that you don't have to be thinking anything while you say your mantra. And as Bhairavi Nikhila is pointing out, as we'll soon see in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, we learned that japa, breath, is japa. So it's ajapa japa. We don't even need a mantra because there's one already inherent in the breath. That's like some next level shit, or it's some like ground floor shit. I don't know, depending on like where you are. Either this is super advanced or super basic. But in any case, say you have a mantra, Panchakshari, something like that. Okay, now what if you never visualized anything ever? You just chanted the mantra aloud, or ideally quietly. We always say manasa japa. According to the Kularnava Tantra, manasa japa is higher than saying it aloud because it's more internal. You know, by the way, if you say it aloud, chances are you'll be like mechanical with it. But if you say it internally, chances are it's going to be a little bit more meaningful. And our gurus would tell us, watch your tongue. As you chant the mantra, if your tongue is wriggling a little bit, it's still kind of externalized. But if you can somehow chant it without moving your tongue, you'll feel it's very deep. It's like it's happening almost like in the center of your brain or in the back of your head. You feel it's like deeper. The mantra is vibrating in a deeper place than just the prefrontal cortex. And the benefit is, if you learn to do it like this, you can do it now. Like, I'm talking to you, but the mantra is there. And I can move my tongue however I want, and still I can do japa, because now the japa is not contingent upon a movement of the tongue or a movement of the lips. Anyway, whether it's out loud or upamshu, or whether it's manasa japa, or whether it's ajapa japa, I mean, we can't control for that. But whatever the case may be, maybe that's all you need to do. Maybe you don't have to visualize the yantra or visualize the deity. Maybe you don't even need to do puja. Holy Mother didn't think so. It's helpful. Homa, puja, all of these things are helpful, and they're worth doing, and they're worth learning. But I just want to point out that, like, you never need to do anything. You're already that which you're looking for. And on a deeper level, even short of that, we don't even have to go to that level. We can just say, like, what else is there but chanting the name of God lovingly over and over and over? That will work. Japat Siddhi. So, how about this? Instead of doing 5 Puraścaraṇas with Homa, Tarpana, Marjana, and Bhojana, how about you just focus on Japa and you consider, say we're doing Panchakshari, 5-syllable mantra, you consider 500,000 repetition to be 1 Puraścārana. Because it would be. That 5 covers Japa, Tarpana, Homa, Marjana, Bhojana, all of that is 500,000. So like then, instead of giving 500,000 Japa, 50,000 Homa, 5,000 Tarpana, 500 Marjana, and 50 Bhojana, instead of giving that, why don't you give 2,500,000 Panchakshari mantras? It would be the same thing. So 2.5 million Panchaksharis, right? 500,000 times 5. 5 lakhs by 5, that's 2.5 million, right? So 2.5 million repetitions of Panchakshari is equal to 5 full Puraścaraṇas with the various like Homa, Tarpana, Marjana kind of thing, which I think is thrilling. It's thrilling. It means you need nothing else. From now on, you need nothing else but that mantra, and just do that mantra, chant it, and of course you're going to need a rosary, you're going to need some ways maybe to keep track, and like you want to keep track of these things. Not because numbers matter, what accounting can there be in issues of love, but because they do matter to us. They don't matter to God. Like we can't buy God with a certain number of repetitions. But that's not the point. God lets her side, like let her handle grace. We can only think about self-effort, and this is just an offering. It's an offering for no other reason than because it pleases her, with no outcome in mind. We just want to do it, and notice how much direction this gives to your spiritual life. Like you now finally have like something to aim for, something to do. It's like all the energy of America, which is devoted towards getting money. That's good. And that energy now can be applied to sadhana. So instead of like dawdling and listlessly sitting by the bank of the Ganga and just like talking and chatting and gossiping all day, which is eventually what spiritual life becomes, because we don't have any like direction. Sooner or later, just give it 4 years, 5 years, give it 10 years. That zeal just feathers away. Many of us are young, and many of us aren't. By young, I don't mean like age-wise. I don't mean in terms of the body. I mean in terms of spirituality. We're just getting started. Maybe 2-3 years ago you came to this. Maybe. Of course, your whole life. But I mean, in this way. Give it 30 years. Where will you be? Where will you be in 10 years? Where will you be in 8 years? The zeal will ebb and flow. And if you're doing the same thing every single day, I don't know, many of you in the next 2 years will go on to a different tradition. You'll just abandon all of this because it'll stop being edgy and new. And that's fine. That's part of your journey and you should do that. But if you're going to stick to this tradition, if you're going to go all the way with it, you have to account for the fact that there are going to come times when it's just going to be boring and lethargic and dull, and the zeal will ebb and flow. In those times, right? In those times, it's so important to have direction. Otherwise, we'll just lapse into idle chatter and gossip and sitting by the bank of the Ganga, smoking chillam to no end. If you're going to smoke chillam, smoke it in a way that's spiritually nourishing, which can be done. Yeah, I got you. I'll pack one in just a little bit with you, Kalidasi. But it's so important that we have direction, that spiritual life has a forward momentum, that there's Icha, Jnana, and Kriya. I want to emphasize this Kriya, action. Let's do something about it. That's what we learned from Swami Brahmananda, from Swami Vivekananda. Of course, all of them, all the direct disciples who truly integrated what Sri Ramakrishna had to teach them, like Sri Ramakrishna, gave their lives to intense, active sadhana. So when we look at Sri Ramakrishna, not just in those 12 years, especially in those 12 years, of course, but throughout the rest of his life is a living testament to the power of sadhana. Not that effort can overcome grace. Ultimately, it's grace. But it's that effort that opens us up more and more to grace, as it were. It's almost as if the grace that we feel now in our life is our desire, ability, and ultimately, I guess I'll say desire and ability. It's our desire and ability to do sadhana. And ultimately doing that sadhana. That's what grace looks like. We don't know anything else about grace but this. That we want to do sadhana. And now we have a sadhana to do. Let's fucking do it. That's the invitation. So to live a life of sadhana is easy when you have this kind of structure. So some of you, again, will do the whole thing with the Homa and Tarpana and Marjana and Bhojana. Like that's the kind of thing that you like. Others maybe will just do Homa and Japa. Maybe some of you will just do japa, but at least all of us will work with mantra in a systematic way in which we're keeping track and in which we have goals and in which we feel like we're always making progress, always moving forward and staying enlivened and dynamic. And I think that's all I have to say regarding Puraścaraṇa. So that's the review, you guys. And like that's it. That's the whole sadhana. There's nothing left to say after this. Do you understand? There's nothing left to say. There's no instruction left anymore after this, because everything else that you want to learn, you will learn from the mantra itself. Who gives the mantra? God forbid, not me. Shiva alone can give the mantra. We don't coin mantras. We don't make them up. They come from the tradition. So, okay, let's stop there. Here's what we say though. I've been trying to close the lecture for a while, but one last closing note. There is, in this tradition, a kind of meditation that you do while you chant the mantra. I just said you don't need to, But it might be valuable while you chant the mantra to close your eyes and visualize the deity, either in a geometric form or in an anthropomorphic form, or just think about or contemplate the concept of the deity while you chant the mantra. And this is because in Patanjali's book, which is pre-tantric, by the way, it's not a tantric teaching, but in that Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it says, Tad japam tad artha bhavanam. Artha meaning, bhavana means visualizing. So, contemplating. And I gave a lecture a long time ago, I think, 2 or 3, 4 weeks ago, about bhavana and many ways to understand bhavana. The buddhi as imagination and intuition, not just contemplation. So bhavana means to think, to contemplate, to analyze, but it also means to visualize, to imagine. So bhavana means think about the artha, the meaning of the mantra that you're doing japa for. So if the mantra is a Kali Vidya, if you're chanting a Kali mantra, what is the bhavana here? Obviously, the form of the deity, whether it's a yantra or a physical form. Now, Sonuma is asking a great question. Can you just look at the deity? Absolutely yes. In fact, Swami Shivananda and Holy Mother and many others said that if you just look at the picture of Sri Ramakrishna, you'll get a lot of benefit. A lot of people say, I close my eyes, I can't picture him. Who needs to? Just open your eyes and look. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, I think, once criticize somebody for coming to a temple and closing his eyes. Not that it's bad to close your eyes. Obviously, going inward is so wonderful and so hard for so many of us. But when you're in a temple and there's a murti of the divine before you, what will you gain from closing your eyes? What will happen? You'll be able to visualize the deity better in your heart? Why not just open your eyes and look at that deity that everyone is worshipping? Why not look at her and say, Hi Ma, Jai Ma, Hi Ma? Why not? I mean, isn't that actually as far as we know, that's as internal as visualizing something? Because nothing ever is external to me. Nothing is outside of consciousness. Given this fact, when I'm looking at Jamie, it's the same thing as when I close my eyes and think of Jamie. Like now I see her, I close my eyes, I'm trying to picture her in my mind's eye. I can see more or less this form, but it's static, it's not living, it's not where she is now, I don't think. It's where she was and where my mind is now trying to recreate that. But if I open my eyes, there she is. Yeah, see? Dynamic. This is darshana. So darshana means seeing, and seeing can be internal with visualization, or it can be quote unquote external. But is it really external? So Sonoma is making a powerful point here. And this is, I think, one of the best ways to break up your sadhana. Instead of just closing your eyes and visualizing the deity, which is wonderful and which we recommend, because working on your visualization is really important. In fact, where's Viranatha? So this is actually very helpful for visualizing and things like that. It's by God's grace, we can see. Why then do we need to close our eyes and try to visualize? What if there's aphantasia or something? Then it might not be productive to close our eyes and try to visualize when that's not the way our mind works. And why problematize that? Why say, we need to, I've in the past said if you do more homa, you'll develop your faculty of inner imagining. Now I want to say, fuck that. Because who needs inner imagining when there's a picture of God? Just look at it. So I think just doing japa and looking at your murti is awesome. Just looking at the picture of Ramakrishna, right? So Numa, just look at her. Who needs anything else? And we ask, what should we visualize? Again, you could visualize your murti. You can visualize your own understanding of Ma Kali. Sri Ramakrishna once told M that he could visualize his own mother if he wanted to. Sri Ramakrishna, I think, was dead serious, and M, I think, was joking. M was like, so if everyone's God, I can just think about my mother? That's what Freud did. I don't know if he realized God through that. That's what Freud thinks we're all doing. And I think on one level he's right. We're all obsessed with our mother because it's all just Ma. And so if M wants to meditate on his mother, Sri Ramakrishna thinks, power to you. He says to M, yes, you'll realize God by meditating on your mother. And later Swami Vivekananda at Thousand Islands Park will say, if we can worship but one spark of the Divine Mother in our mother, we'll realize the highest, or something like that. And then she is. And of course, a lot of us have very complicated relationships with our mother. It's not that mother that we're talking about. It's the mother that's loved us through the guise of many a mother. On my flight to Phoenix, there was a person sitting next to me. We had a beautiful conversation. And by the time we got to Phoenix, as we were landing, she took both of my hands in hers. And she's like a 70-year-old woman, elderly woman. She was weeping and weeping and weeping. And she said, wherever your mother is, because she got the sense that I hadn't been home in a while, to my home. She said, wherever your mother is, I'm sure she's proud of you. And it hit me. I as an Indian child on the run, as it were, right? Doing all this yogi stuff, not being an engineer. It's whoa, it really hit me. But then I'm this is my mother in this moment. And this is Kali who has loved us in the guise of many a mother. So it's not about our personal mother, it's any time we've been mothered by anyone, man, woman, or non-binary, like anyone, any animal, anybody who's ever nurtured us. It's that nurturing alone. What else is there to think of? And if we can open our eyes and see art, whether it's a murti or whether it's a yantra, whether it's a picture, like to see art that represents that nurturing, why close my eyes then? To close my eyes to what? Having said that though, a lot of people will find that when they close their eyes and when they visualize a particular form that they're working hard to conjure up with their imagination, they gain some other things, which might actually be a hindrance in terms of spiritual life, but which might also be valuable. And that is the power to visualize and the power to concentrate. It's really concentration. That's the power that we're developing when we do this dhyana, when we do this meditation. I know, Ma, I know. And I love you in that exact same way. And it's like so interesting that like if you do meditation, you're actually concentrating. So anytime your mind drifts away from the image, you bring it back. And when you do japa, you're also meditating, except every time your mind moves away from the mantra, you bring it back. So now your dhyayam means object of meditation, is very, very rich. It's not just an image, it's also a sound. So they go together. So you can't have nama and rupa separately. So most people, when they meditate, either they just watch the mind, which is wonderful. Again, that's valid. But we often fear that becomes passive. So it's like you have 9 hours and you sit there and for 9 hours, you just watch the mind. Chances are you can become very lethargic, very tamasic. It might not actually be meditation. You might feel calm and peaceful from now and then. Like you might get a sense of like being kind of chill, but I mean, there's Xanax for that. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of meditation will work for some people, and it's definitely included in the vast array of practices that we get in the tradition. But in yoga, we prefer something more active. And by active, we mean choosing one thing and focusing on it. This is called focused awareness meditation as opposed to open awareness meditation. Both are great though, don't get me wrong. But if you're focusing, the question is then, what should I focus on? Now, many people who do a focused awareness type practice will choose an image, but without a attending sound, they're leaving like the other part of their mind open to like thoughts in the form of sounds. But if you choose a sound like Om and you don't have an image of, say, the Om symbol or the sky or like an ocean of light, then you might be focusing on the sound, but you're leaving another part of the mind, the image-making faculty, open to the proliferation of images. So in either case, your focus, your concentration is being scattered, either through not blocking the sound passage or not blocking the sight passage. So when sound and sight come together, in other words, when the form and the mantra come together, meditation really takes off. So when we say we're meditating, often in our tradition, what we mean is we're reciting our mantra. We're japa karo, right? Japa karo, we're making japa, we're doing japa. All we do is japa. But that japa is not just the mantra. Of course, that's all you need really, japat siddhi. It's also an attending like to the heart, to feeling the presence of the deity within, to visualizing the deity within. So here's some very simple instructions that anybody can practice anywhere. Choose a mantra. That mantra will either be given to you or you'll find it somewhere, or just whatever you like. And then that mantra is associated to a deity. Okay, now in your mind's eye, visualize that deity to the best of your ability, however you like, based on the pictures you've seen on the internet or at temples or whatever, or however you imagine the deity to be. Now imagine that deity is inside you, seated in the heart. Keep your meditation focused on the heart. There's no need to meditate in the center of the brain or anywhere else. Stay in the heart. This is what we learned from our teachers. Of course, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but in terms of this lineage, we say stay in the heart. Then, meditating on the heart, feel like you are outside looking in. Right? Like you're there, of course, in the meditation, but as the meditator. And the thing that you're meditating on is actually your essence nature. So if you visualize the deity as being outside of yourself, then likely you're going to maybe over time reinforce the idea that you are separate from the deity, which is fine. That's also cool. But if you visualize the deity as within yourself, being yourself, then it's really wonderful, because then you get the sense that like, oh, like in truth, that I'm looking at myself actually. The deity is my own ideal form. Right? Wait, let me just put the link for somebody. Let me just send a link real quick. Okay. So this is a very important thought, that if the deity is seated within, I can reify and reinforce the idea again and again that I am this deity, this is the essence of who I am. And the Kundalini will jump from the Muladhara to the Anahata, and from there it can jump into the formula. So this deity yoga is still a kind of non-dual practice, except it uses devotional otherizing language, but this meditation like does account for that and flips the script, as it were. So your otherizing, your devotional kind of approach is attributed to yourself, to the true self, not the egoic self, the self that comes and goes, but the real essential archetypical self, who is the deity for whom you're chanting. Okay, so that's a wonderful way to do it. Just visualize the deity, and then, by the way, try to make this as vivid as possible. So one suggestion here is, whatever deity you want to meditate on, have a picture of that deity in front of you. And then, based on the stuff we said earlier, just do both. Open your eyes, look at the deity, chant, 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 chant. Close your eyes, try to visualize the deity, chant, 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 chant. And when you can't see the vision anymore, open again and look and close and recreate. So this is very important. We're recreating the deity in the heart. Wonderful, Kalidas. And that's a complicated meditation, because the more elaborate and complicated the deity, the harder it's going to be to visualize her. So the more arms, the more heads. And of course, when it comes to yantras, my God, try to visualize the Sri Chakra. It's so hard. You have to draw it so many times before you're at the place where you can actually visualize the Sri Chakra correctly. So, I mean, I have an easier task, because I just like visualize 5 downward pointing triangles. Simple. But even then, to hold the image of 5 downward pointing triangles with a circle, with 8 petaled lotus, with the bhupura, like to hold that image for a long time requires a kind of muscle that very few of us have. That, by the way, is worth billions of dollars. Because advertising agencies, they're willing to pay billions of dollars for like 1 second of that. Whatever the fuck that is. Imagine, they know how valuable your attention is. Imagine how valuable it would be to then claim that attention. Imagine, developing your concentration is literally worth billions of dollars. And in fact, once this becomes concentrated, what would have taken 3 hours becomes a 30-minute task for you, a 3-minute task for you maybe. And a lot of people do it for that reason. It's like a superpower. Learning to concentrate is a superpower. And this is why yoga can bring siddhis. And for many people, that's going to be disconcerting and problematic, and it will upset a person's spiritual life. But for the most part, it's helpful insofar as it empowers sadhana. So you'll notice, the more you meditate in this way, the more energy you'll have. You'll notice that energy is kind of leaked out when we think about lots of stuff. Don't you get, when you get to the end of the day and you've just like, thought about a million things, you're like, you're just exhausted. But if you're doing something that you love, and you're so present with it and you focus on it, you feel energized afterward. And that's, I think, an important point, that like energy is associated to concentration. So too with joy and happiness and bliss. If you have one good meditation, like if you're really focused for like just 10 minutes, the bliss that you'll get from that, it's a highly enlivened state, highly energized state, and a highly joyful state. So let me just say this, the success that you will have in life, in any field, is directly proportional to how much you can concentrate on that at that given time. So if you're doing, say, if you're coding for a company, if you have the power of concentration, whatever you do while you're concentrating will be high quality work, and it will contribute directly to your success in that endeavor. So that's true of puja. That's true of everything. So therefore, developing concentration is helpful. Second thing I'm going to say, the joy that you feel in your life is directly proportional to how much you can concentrate. That's another direct proportionality. And the final thing is, the degree to which you have energy and enlivenment and power is also directly proportional to the degree to which you can concentrate and stay present. And this is the sadhana for it. Japa is not just about the mantra, it's also about staying present with the mantra and the form. And Bhairavi Nicholas making a very good point here. We pay attention. So where should our money go? I mean, this being the most important resource. Time is nothing compared to attention. By the way, with attention, we realize we can both dilate and contract time. Haven't we noticed? Time is contingent upon attention. So like just mastering attention means you master time, you master that thing which companies are willing to pay billions of dollars for. So if you're going to pay attention, the question then is, who are you paying? And we say, render unto Caesar what is due unto Caesar, but let's pay God, you know? It's like that's where the money goes. And by God, I just mean the essential self, reality. I don't even care for the word God anymore. That's just a tool, you know. That's, I think, important to remember that God is a tool for the human mind to understand that which is beyond the human mind. I'm so cool with that idea because we accept Buddhism fully. Like Sri Ramakrishna's view ultimately is agnostic. He says, who is there who can say what Brahman is? It's like a salt doll going to measure the ocean. Be very careful, I think, and we are careful, and we should be careful, of anyone who claims to know God. God cannot be known. Who knows God? God cannot be known. And to know God is to limit God. God can be more than known. That's a profound point. So again, don't get caught up in all these superstitions, including the superstition called God, which is a very helpful superstition. And you know, at the end of the day, you'll realize all of your prayers that you prayed in the small hours to some mother somewhere out there in the sky, they were answered by none other than you yourself. So I want to close with one of the most powerful notes in our tradition. There is no Kali other than me. But by me here, I mean something far deeper than I could have ever known. I am the one who heard my prayers. I am the one who answered them. I am the one from whom all Tantra has come. I am the one who powers the Tantra. With my being alone do the mantras gain power. Nothing exists outside of me. There are no ghosts and there are no gods. There are no demons and no demiurges. There is nothing that exists that I did not create. And ultimately, they are all but bubbles coming and going in the ocean of my being. Krishna, Buddha, Christ, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, these are but bubbles coming and going in the ocean of my being. The all is I. The I has all become, and all is bliss. For the I is bliss and bliss alone. May this be an offering from myself, to myself, of myself. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanam Astu. Sri Kali Arpanam Astu. Chima. Okay.